because price is what you pay, value is what you get. People paid ridiculous multiples on the assumption that the growth would never end, and now we know that the growth rates are going to end. They're not going to be completely disintermediated by AI, but they no longer have the same pricing power that warrants 40, 60, 80 times earnings multiples. So when you get a reduction of growth, when you're paying multiples that high, if growth goes down by 5% from 30 to 25, you don't get a 5% reduction in the stock. You get multiple re-ratings, sometimes 20, 25, 30%, which takes the stock down 30, 40, and then you get forced structural selling. And on the other side of that is the opportunity to benefit from dislocation, and that's where you make your money. So, you know, one of the things that we were doing, both in the tariffs and in this situation, was buying each red day. And what we would tell our audience, we have a podcast, we have our clients, we would say, look, we don't have a crystal ball. We don't know when this is going to end, but we do know that the price relative to the free cash flow in the companies we are buying is extremely attractive on an intermediate to long-term basis. And that's the only way you can really outperform in efficient markets.
So I feel like one of the things that seems to be at play is there is some FOMO on both sides. You know, right now it's the have we done too much and, you know, head to the exits like last week. Although, like, right now, obviously, we're indicating higher.
Yep. Could change by tomorrow.
It could. I mean, if there's another tweet or a truth post.
Probably not, though. He's kind of indicated where his hand is at the moment, and he wouldn't put this out if he wasn't really going to dial it back.
Okay. So let's talk about opportunities, dislocation opportunities. There's a couple names on your list right now. VF Corp is one of those. Tell us what your view is on that and why you're constructive on it.
Yeah, so consumer discretionary is the most underweight since October of 2022. So if you're going to get bang for your buck on the recovery or a bounce back rally, it's going to be in consumer discretionary. Consumer sentiment is at multi-year lows. Everyone's in the gutter. No one thinks anything good is going to happen. But you have these tax refunds. So if this actually gets alleviated and gas prices come down, consumer discretionary is the most operating leverage to make money. So VF Corp, this is Vans, Timberland, North Face, Alta running shoes, JanSport, Eastpak. He's paid down debt. Bracken Darrell is a turnaround specialist. His last turnaround was a company called Logitech. They make the webcams and the mice. Yep. He came into that stock when it was down 86%. If you invested $1 million when he started and sold it when he left, you made a 26-bagger trough to peak. 1 million became 26 million. He's doing the same thing with VF Corp. It won't be a 26-bagger, but we do believe from these levels, and it's come in a lot. No. Okay. 3-bagger over the next 3 to 5 years, which is a very above market IRR, very attractive. 10% of their portfolio was back to growth a year ago. 75% of their portfolio is back to growth today. They've deleveraged the balance sheet. Cash flows are coming back. They've taken $300 million of costs out of the business. Bet on Bracken. My nickname for him is Growth Bracken. He's going to turn this thing around.
I like that. And last one on your list today is Disney.
Yes.
That must have been a tough one. There are believers in Disney.
Yeah.
You see the magic returning to the Mouse House this year.
Happiest place on earth. What can I tell you? Look, Josh D'Amato, he ran the experiences business. It was a $36 billion business. It's the highest return on invested capital business in the Disney portfolio. This company used to be a parks company that owned media. Now it's a media company that owns parks, kind of thing. Record free cash flow last year. You wouldn't know it by the stock. They did.
Ranting and raving. So if I find that Schwab ink again, maybe it'll work. Okay. Cool. Oh man, frustration. That's a real thing when you get something settled, like set in stone, and then you gotta redo it. Frustrations. Frustrations. That's also what you're gonna feel, cause I gotta make my coffee. Whew. But we're up. Who else can say that? That actually sounds kind of nice too. Warm piano jazz. Should I do that? What is the vibe right now? Yeah, that's fine right now. That's pretty much beginners. Alright. Okay. We go. It's a wild thing that's happening, but I'll put a thing on. Alright, let's go. There we go. Yahoo Finance is better than nothing for right now. It's better than this is.
At Finance of America, we know you've worked hard for your home. So let us help your home work for you. Just like we did for Ann, Dave, and Susan. Because there's a better way to unlock your home equity with our range of reverse mortgage options. So you can access tax-free cash and eliminate your monthly mortgage payments.
That was random, Susan.
And I feel good about it. And I've got that extra cash sitting in an account.
If you're a homeowner 55 and up, you'll have the freedom to use the extra cash your way. From getting some budget relief to covering unexpected costs like medical expenses to funding home renovations. So call 800-959-0155 today to get your free no obligation
Pretty
info.
sure you guys
Because when it comes to
hear
unlocking
me
your home
over
equity, there's a
damn.
better way with FOA. A way that puts more money back into your pocket and lets you get more from your retirement.
Man.
Don't hesitate, do it. It doesn't change your lifestyle,
Alright, let's just get it.
but for the better.
Let's just
You
get
don't
it.
have to
There's no
sacrifice
point in
anything
putting
to do
it
some
off.
of the things you wanted.
Just imagine what your home equity can do for you, thanks to our range of reverse mortgage options. A better retirement is just a phone call away.
Man, let's
I
just
was
get
able
to
to
it.
remodel the kitchen, bedrooms, redo the floors,
get to it.
update plumbing and electric, and bring everything up to date.
So call 800-959-0155 to get your free, no obligation info kit and speak to a lender you can trust. One that's been awarded an A+ by the Better Business Bureau, with experts who guide you every step of the way.
Finance of America just kept working with me. They kept in touch with me. They were always there to answer any questions that I
There
had.
she goes.
It's kind of like a ray of sunshine for my retirement.
If you're 55 and up, call today, because when it comes to unlocking your home equity, there's a better way with FOA, Finance of America. Call today or get your free info kit at FOA.com.
Watch what alcohol does to stuck poop.
See this sharp turn right here?
That's a
Cleveland Clinic calls it the
wild
splenic
way to
flexure.
start a
I call
commercial.
it the poop trap. It's where
Just
15
okay.
pounds of
They
poop
just
is
love
stuck
throwing
in
that
your
word.
body right now.
I don't
when
know
you do
why. I
this
mean, it
for
is a
7
natural.
seconds, it all
That's
comes
crazy.
out.
This is the quickest way to clear out stuck poop.
Look at this. Everyone
She
knows the
loves saying
colon
it.
has twists and turns, right? But what nobody talks
She
about is this
enjoyed
specific
making
bend
that way
right
too
here.
much.
Doctors call this the
I
splenic
mean, the
flexure,
commercial,
but I
not the
call it the
poop.
K-bend. It's the sharpest turn in your colon and exactly where poop gets stuck for millions of people. Here's what nobody
this is
tells
really
you. This
happening.
isn't just another curve. According to
bad,
the
y'all.
Cleveland Clinic, this sharp bend is one of the most common places where waste and gas gets trapped, leading to blood.
We'll wait until the poo commercial's just completely done. Wow. There, you're really gonna make that one play the whole time. Out of everything. Okay. It probably isn't gonna. I don't even know. I don't even know how long they're gonna dedicate to poo. That's wild. It should be no more than 20 seconds. But if I turn if I turn it back on, and they're still talking about poo, I don't know what to say.
Do you want to know where to invest $1,000 right
I was
now?
gonna say, do you know
Goldman
where
Sachs
your
says
poo
that
is?
Elon Musk's new AI breakthrough could trigger an unprecedented market opportunity. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang says, "What
Is this
Elon
another
and
ad
his
too?
team has
Oh my
achieved
god,
is
is that what
singular.
we're doing?
It's never been done before."
Whatever. Guess it's time to stir up fucking coffee.
Imagine being able to build an app with your name on it, just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44.
If you're turning 60,
Do you want to know where to invest?
Almost why I think this has to just be creating room for a more push to really force the Iranian regime into accepting that, hey, the loss is inevitable. Stop now before you hurt your own people more.
Peter, there's a couple of options for what took place this morning and this weekend, too. It's something JP Morgan has pointed out, too, that on one side, maybe Donald Trump isn't telling the entirety of the truth, which would not be a great thing. On the other side, perhaps talks did take place and the Iranian media organizations aren't fully aware. But in this back and forth, doesn't also represent this idea that perhaps there are multiple factions in Iran, that maybe talks are taking place in some capacity, but then there are others trying to exert control. Doesn't this show just how messy this situation is and how far away we are from any sort of resolution?
Yeah, so two things. One, I do want to start. One of our generals has often pointed out that Iran has actually never won a war, but they've never lost a negotiation. So they are great at trying to keep things on the negotiating table while they prepare for more war and to deflect. So, you know, they might also be playing games here as well. So I wouldn't just say that it's our side maybe playing some games. And having said that, I think as we look at that, that's one of the risks that we see is Iran fracturing into a bunch of independent groups, each with their own set of military equipment, each with their own agenda. And that's really hard, right? If you have 7, 8 different factions, each kind of doing their own thing, all deciding to say, keep fighting with the U.S., maybe while some other group says they don't want to. I think that's really the hard part. We did such a good job, I guess, in terms of decapitating the regime. It's unclear who's there. But I have to say this, right? If you look at the IRGC, they have had intermarriages. So they're very closely connected from a family side. They are very wealthy, they're very motive, and they do have a bit of a decentralized command. So this could continue. So again, it makes it really hard. Who did we make peace with, and will that peace even hold?
All right,
if
Peter,
we get to that piece. Sorry about that.
Peter,
I was jumping the gun there.
No, Peter. We're gonna keep you on with us because you are Academy Securities is so stocked with experience and wisdom. We want to hear more from Peter Cheer of Academy on this program. We're going to check on the markets right now as well because we've seen an incredible turnaround here. S&P futures, which were down sharply this morning. As oil rose. NYMEX crude was over $100 a barrel at some points this morning.
Really?
Now we see futures higher, and you can see from this chart the amazing spike that we saw after the president's tweet, which shows, if nothing else, the power of of the White House in these markets on a day-to-day basis. Brent crude right now back down to 101.36.
World's leading supercar.
That looks like WTI did.
You'd think they would have a little pull.
So right now we're seeing a massive drop to these contracts, 10% moves. As I said, $1.16 off Brent crude this morning. Coming up, Trump's ultimatum for Iran invites escalation. This, according to Bloomberg opinion columnist Mark Champion. He joins us next with Peter Cheer. This is Open Interest.
Okay. Nobody likes ultimatum. Alright, that's good. This is gonna taste so good. Oh. Oh, it's almost to that perfect sip. Things are up there. Just as I said that, Europe's waking up well.
Tune in to Bloomberg Business Week Daily.
We got to talk crypto.
From the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead.
What's the conversation around your company?
Bringing you insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy.
Planning very big things.
Your new level of premium.
Plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens.
The floodgates of innovation are going to open up.
You can't fake passion. You either are or you aren't.
Bloomberg Business Week Daily, only on Bloomberg.
I don't care. We're gonna smoke. I really don't care.
Have you ever thought about, or would you make a movie for a streaming service? Would you make a Netflix movie?
Yeah, that's a great question.
I mean, I'm waiting for one where I ask and you go, "That was a shitty question."
Yeah. I mean, you know, you good at your job, bro. Like, it's just actually the first time anybody's ever asked me that. You know, I'm not here to say what I would and wouldn't do in the future. You know, but the theatrical experience is one that means a great deal to me. It means a great deal to us.
Mm-hmm.
I feel a certain responsibility. Like if Fruitville had happened a calendar year later, it probably would have come out on streaming. You know, I've been fortunate enough that everything that I've written and directed has been a theatrical release. So I feel a duty to try to protect that. You know, but that's where I'm at today.
Bringing you up to the minute political news whenever and wherever
I'm just a hater.
happens.
I'm waking up in a bad
Kendall in
mood. I'm sorry.
Washington,
I'm gonna
and
be
this is Bloomberg.
I'm gonna be a little chicky.
Middle East and Africa, vibrant resources and high-yield investment opportunities abound. Join me on Horizons Middle East and Africa for the stories, newsmakers, and insight from this exciting region. Now weekdays, only on Bloomberg.
Let's get now to high interest. Look what's making headlines around the world beyond the ultimatum that the president has now elongated with Iran. Two pilots were killed late last night after an Air Canada plane carrying 76 people collided with a fire truck shortly after landing at New York's LaGuardia Airport. The NTSB has launched an investigation. Meanwhile, LaGuardia will stay shut until at least 2 p.m. this afternoon. So far, over 550 flights have been canceled. And Newark Liberty Airport
that just shows you live in kind of a shitty fucking country if one port, one place gets shut down. Why is it that easy to fucking chokehold y'all?
Mounting travel chaos across the New York region.
Figure out some emergency protocol.
With closures at one point at 2 of our 3 major hubs. Chicago Fed President Austin Goolsbee says interest rates could go either way. Cuts if inflation cools,
Barely run a
if
fucking
it
startup
surges,
company.
especially with the war in the Middle
Imagine
East,
running a nation.
creating tension. The Fed held rates steady last week, but markets are now leaning towards higher rates as inflation risks grow. Danny?
Let's get more
Or,
on what
yeah,
we learned
that'll
in
do
the
it.
past 2 hours with the president on Truth Social,
Yeah, we
saying
gotta
very
get out of
good
that shit.
and
It's
productive
about winning quick.
conversations, meaning that there could be a cease of any
Take the
attacks on
fucking,
Iranian
take the
energy
surge in
infrastructure
the
for the next
economy
5
and
days.
then
Let's
get
bring
out.
in Bloomberg opinion columnist Mark Champion. And Mark, you had been writing about it this weekend, that those attacks would be a serious escalation, but you see this as not necessarily
serious
a taco, if I
escalation
can put
to
words
a
in your
war
mouth,
that
not
already
necessarily
started.
backing down, but a postponement of 5 days of this ultimatum. How are you viewing it?
Yeah,
Shit's gonna be
I don't
wild.
claim
It's
to
gonna be
know
a
what is going to
Friday's
happen in
gonna
the
be
next 5
nut.
days.
This week's gonna be
Trump may or may
crazy.
not know himself what he's going to do.
Futures and
But
options.
what
Yeah.
I would say is that, we've been here before. Trump has a very flexible approach to deadlines. Sometimes, he puts them off just because he was never, he was just trying it on and he was never very serious. Other times, in this occasion, I think it is more serious. I mean, I think what your guest just before was saying was right on the money in terms of the fact that look at what else is happening. You have the Pentagon asking for another $200 billion in order to fund the war. You have Marines on the way, and this is another area where Trump has form, if you like. Which is that he will continue negotiations and then at the same time have a build-up, and you're always speculating whether that build-up is just designed to strengthen his hand at the table, or whether he doesn't really expect to get what he is asking for at the table, and he's just making time.
I think the man
to
always
get, all his
expects
ducks
to
in
get
order.
what he wants.
So
Be right back,
clearly
and
the
then
Marines who are
I'll be
coming,
in
they
this
were not
chair
pre-planned before
for
this
a while.
this
We
war
gotta
began.
study.
So they are an adjustment of the war. And the question again is he bringing them to, and he just wants the time in order to get them in place, or is he actually looking for a way out? Because, the risk in terms of escalation to the stock markets, to the inflation, to the oil price, they're extremely high.
Mark, this gets to, I think, the heart of my question for the last 3 weeks has been, do you think the administration has consistent objectives for what they want to achieve here? Because the president has called for regime change. He's even said he would like a say in who the next leader of Iran is. He's also said he won't accept anything less than unconditional surrender, but it's starting to look like he'll accept just reopening the Strait of Hormuz. Is that a gamut, or are the goalposts moving?
Absolutely. So I think you need to separate into two aspects. The first is that the Pentagon has had very consistent tasks, the goals that they are set to execute. And those have been extremely consistent. But they are not a substitute for the strategic goals, which ultimately have to be political. There is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that there have been, any kind of consistently created goals that Trump had. From the outset, he just sort of fired a bunch of goals covering everything, and that went right up to regime change. And regime change is extremely difficult to do from the air, as we're discovering.
Hey, Mark, thank you so much for joining us. That's Mark Champion of Bloomberg Opinion. And still with us is Academy Securities Head of Macro Strategy, Peter Scheer. And Peter, Mark, kind of confirming a lot of what you've been saying. I just wonder, after this, if you can do anything but just shrink your books and get as close to the ground as you possibly can right now.
Friends are funny.
Or are there moments, are there parts of this market that you can trade in?
I think right now, if I had to pick where I want to choose, I want to be long actually treasuries now. I think we kind of hit this point and maybe want to see if we fade a little bit from here. I think we are either going to get higher oil prices, which at some point are going to scare the global economy enough that we rally on treasuries. So I like 10s and beyond because I think recession starts coming into play, or we're going to get this little pause where rates can rally. So I like that. I'm also trying to figure out what's the way to invest in European defense. I'm trying to figure out who in Europe's going to make drones. If I look at Europe trying to, make their own military at some point, it's not going to happen anytime soon with, you know, aircraft carriers or tanks or jets. But I think maybe they can do something in the drone space. So
yeah,
what's the
I know
opportunity
they
there, right?
don't.
How does
I
Europe maybe
know
build up a defense force
beautiful
around drones?
scholarship. They are not
Same
happy
time, how
for
do we
you.
build that up? So I think there's opportunities.
Yeah,
And
I
I
think
do
that
think global
they
energy
probably give you
production
a
is
certain
still
amount
going
of
to be a
time.
key, right? We are going to sell off and bounce around. But I think the reality is Europe in particular is going to wake up and say, it
There's
is
gotta be a
insane
penalty
that
if you
we
didn't
ignore
use
the
it.
North Sea, that we ignore so many of our own energy resources, that we don't refine and process enough of ours. I think Canada's got some of these same issues.
Until
So
the
I think you're going to see
beneficiary has
this real
qualified
global push
expenses.
to be much more independent and almost vertically
I
integrated
believe, yeah, they
nations.
become
So
taxable.
each nation has to be a little
Oh,
bit more vertically integrated. So I think anything, oil field services, those companies will still do well. Maybe you want to
no,
fade it a
up
little bit
into
while
the
oil comes off,
scholarship.
but this is a multi-year play, and I think you got to look at
That's
nuclear,
cool. That's
all
more
these things that we
reasonable.
were kind of
Alright,
looking at one
usually
point as
they're
the data
jerks
center
about
AI
it,
trade. I think are going to be this
but they have to
electricity
think about
independence
so
trade.
many
So
people.
those are
But
where I kind of want
nonetheless,
to add my money
you
as
gotta
you
add
get
a
these
little bit of
opportunities.
like
Does this,
heart in there, you know.
you've been consistent in this ProSec trade, Peter, for months now.
Short-term
Does it
unsecured.
continue even if the
When you gotta
U.S.
make a money
backs
move.
out of Iran, if we find some solution, some magical solution that
I
reopens the
hate
Strait of
Coverdale
Hormuz
questions.
and gives us a regime in Iran that
Give
we
it a
and
Coverdale.
maybe more
Covers
importantly
nothing other
Israel
than
can
frustration.
accept? Or do you think
Yes, I
that
don't
we're
know.
in some kind of forever war or wars as long as President Trump is in the White House?
So I think we were in this kind of steady state, let's call it the world order, where if anyone was kind of affecting, you know, rules-based order, it was China, right? China was pushing the envelope everywhere.
I think they
on
might
that
tax
rules-based
you
order.
more.
I think we are moving to a system, production for
I don't
security
know
and
about
resilience, or
430.
PROSEC, where every country's a little bit more independent.
Portion
And I think,
subject to
you know,
income.
like in chemical
There's a earnings
chemistry, you
portion.
go from one steady state to another steady state. There's often some volatility and violence in between. And I think that's what we're going to see, these periods of uncertainty and
I would say
volatility.
35.
And I think the takeaway is countries that figure this out are going to say, hey, okay,
Fuck me.
we
Okay,
escaped
great
the narrow
start,
one if we
y'all.
get
Great
the strait
start.
reopened. How do we make sure that in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road, we're not in that same state?
When a
And some
Coverdale
countries will do
ESA
something about it, and some will be
service
go,
age
wow,
30
this is
without
all okay,
using
let's
all
go
the
back to
funds
business as usual.
qualified as
So I think
business
you're going to see
expenses.
real push on this. You're seeing Europe even start maybe to
There is an earnings
fracture along the
portion.
lines. Germany and France. I think France was
That's
always
dope.
slightly more
Not only do
independent,
they
saying
set
we need to
you
do
up
these things.
with
So I think
a
that's where
principal and
the
all that, but
investment
then it
opportunities
earns too.
look at what's going to get looked through this.
Yeah,
And yeah,
people
maybe
that
oil will
really
go
care.
down for a
See, I'm
while.
not
I
sending
still think you want energy
nobody to
independence. You
school if
want
we don't
control of
have
your data
anything like
centers. You
that
want
set
to
up.
make your
You're
own
not
chips,
fucking
right?
thinking
It's a
as
little
a
bit scary
parent.
that people are talking about
Sending those
helium
kids off
and
and
whether
just telling them
Taiwan
to
has
figure
enough
it
helium
out.
to make chips. These things all have to be better managed.
Peter, great to get your take. Really appreciate you jumping on with us at short notice this morning. Peter Cheer is the head of macro strategy at Academy Securities. For the latest on
Investment
Iran, by the way,
advisors,
you
social
can
media
follow
posts
our
are
blog
subject to
on
the
your
same.
Bloomberg terminal by typing TLIV Go. One of the things that you'll notice there is the amazing market
Can't
moves
just be
we've
doing
seen.
everything for
Here
the-
is Brent, for
for the
example. You
gram.
can see right now it's down 8%
For the
at
SEC now.
$103 a barrel. At one
Which
point
is
we saw
fine, represents the
16%.
cutoff between
Sorry,
investment
$16
grade
drop.
and
Right now it's down
high
just
yield
9.
junk
We're seeing
bonds.
futures rise
Junk
as well
bonds,
this morning. They
triple
were down before this Trump tweet, and now S&P futures are up 1.6%.
30-year-old
We come
client
back,
with
we'll
a
get a
high
read
risk
on
tolerance and
the
a
mixed messages
long time
from
seeks
Washington and
maximum
Tehran
growth.
with PNC's Amanda Agadi.
stocks.
We thought we'd escape the purple haze of policy. It
He's
turns
young,
out it just
though.
got more intense. This is Bloomberg Open Interest.
He's young though, so they say least suitable. He's more suitable for a more aggressive growth. Which recommendation would be least? So least would be him sitting on it like that, conservative. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, you're young and you're it's way easier for you to bounce back from a financial mishap. You gotta pay to play, risk it to get the biscuit and all that type of shit. Four business days, material events. Those are all, yeah, 4. 5, 8? What are they?
No,
which one would you say
current
when you look
report
at your career
makes sense.
that the
Okay,
pivotal moment
8K
was
is a
actually that
current
meeting
report. So yeah,
with
shit that's
Robert
really
De Niro?
happening.
It took him 4 years
On a
to
day-to-day
convince
kind of
you
shit.
to open a
CEO
restaurant
resignation
near him. You
manager,
eventually did, and that started a partnership that has lasted through the decade.
You know, I met him 1988 after the My Past Lessons opened.
So that's a good that's actually good that's good to know. So like when shit really happens, like current events, like current reports, those are the shit that
what are he doing?
that's almost as close to like insider. Yeah, 2 days. That's when people will have the time. Normal people, like lay people, when it comes to the business. Yeah.
I understand.
That's when you can make your moves and really posture yourself in a certain direction.
He understands my concept.
In a certain
He
movement
supports
direction,
me
yeah.
100%. But he's a very smart
At the end of the day.
people. Sometimes so strange idea, but it's good idea. So example, Nobu Hotels idea
Into
come
the
from him.
following
He
still
say,
about
hey Nobu, so we have a lot of new restaurants coming in somebody's hotel. For him, doesn't make any sense. Then we start Nobu Hotel in Las Vegas 11 years ago. Now it's a big
like that
success.
MA
So next step is the residence.
Gifts are
Astonishing day for US
gifts.
technology.
I'm just going. Oh, there's two with
Shaping
gifts.
the region's
A
technology
gift
ecosystem.
Asia's biggest tech news and innovation.
It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry. We'll
The
show you
gifts
what's
are
happening in
revocable,
ETFs like
That'd
no
be-
one else. ETF
I'm gonna read it
IQ
again.
only
The gift of
on
the
Bloomberg.
gift to the miner can be revoked if needed. That's cold-blooded. Not only are you taking something away, but it's a kid.
We are moments away from the start of trading on what is
Adults are
already
cold.
an insanely volatile Monday.
Well, they
Futures
might
were
be breaking
down
our future.
when I drove in. President Trump tweeted
Hold
that he's
on,
been
I'm
having
about
good
the
talks
markets.
with Iran and that we could see a complete and total cessation of war by the end of a 5-day period. Now you have futures up 1.5%.
Let's go, y'all. Let's make some money.
NASDAQ futures up a little
Oh,
bit more.
okay, well,
Russell 2000
we
futures
got
up
time.
more than
As long as
2%.
we're up,
President
right?
Trump on Fox
As
Business
long
said
as
we
we're
could
up,
have
we
a
can get back
deal
to this.
with Iran
We have
within
to
the next
check
5 days
out
or sooner.
our shit.
He said. You've got Copa
See, we're out here
Airlines
making
ringing
sure
the
that
bell
you guys
on the New
got
York
your stuff,
Stock
but
Exchange.
man,
This is a stock that had been up
it's
almost
gotta
30%
go
with
around
reinvested
town.
dividends before
Bring
the
it
war. Now
around
they are down more than 5%. And the same is true of Commercial Bank Group here. This is a stock that had been up more than 10% before the war, and now they're unchanged. So you can see a lot of the gains that we've had have been wiped out, which is just one more reason for President Trump to turn this thing around and back out.
Don't like SpongeBob, don't like you.
And how much of that caused positioning to be
I need
low
your
to the ground or
Squidward.
short this market? And then how many of those shorts are getting punished today as we get this
Yes,
rebound? Because there
Squidward.
is a big rebound, Matt, in
Yes,
markets. I want to
Squidward.
show you some individual stocks that are moving. United Airlines, for example, up 6.3%.
The airline company is always moving.
Which had fallen 17% since the war broke out,
Oh
is
my
now up
goodness,
6.7%. Ferrari, which has also been tumbling as
this
they've been
time of the day is
unable to
meant
get
for
their
jokes like
orders and
that.
their cars through to the Middle East. Shares now up 4.3%. It's two different options for
These
this
are the
market.
mom
Is
and
this
dad
just
jokes
the
that are
ultimatum
said in
didn't
the
become
mornings
tenable, so in the
when they
short
don't
term,
wanna be there.
President Trump is backing off there,
That's the
or
gas
talks
tape.
actually happening? And in the latter scenario, that could mean maybe some of these gains stick, Matt.
Yeah, really interesting scenarios outlined there, and of course we could see big moves in either direction. Take a look at what's going on with commodity stocks, because that's where you've seen the biggest moves today.
Let's get
Well, in
some
the underlying commodity
contracts
and now
out
the
there.
producers. Occidental
We move with
actually
Vital,
down
you know
2
this.
2/3%.
Vital Misty,
That's
money
as oil
makers,
drops
income, weekly income
drastically
engines.
on this turnaround here.
What are you
Newmont
guys
mining
trading?
higher
Let me
because
know.
gold had been selling
I want
off
to know.
pretty
I am
severely
nosy as a
this morning,
motherfucker.
and it had been selling off since the war
What are we
started. In
trading?
fact, gold, which was over
I need to go.
$5,000 an ounce, had dropped to at one point 4,099, but right now it's back up to 44.14. So Newmont Mining gaining ground, and CF
What are we
Industries,
trading? Let me know.
which is a
Get in
fertilizer
here.
trade, down
Oh.
still 6% as fertilizer turns around and drops in price as well. The prices, of course, have been elevated
We
due to the
need to
closure of the
make
Strait of Hormuz.
moves.
Let's bring in PNC Chief Investment
Stop
Officer
holding
Amanda
it to
Agati.
yourself.
And
It's so
Amanda,
goddamn
the purple haze of
selfish.
policy was your theme for last year, and now
Let's get
it's
out
very
here.
clearly a purple haze of
Show
war that's
me,
driving
where am
all
I
of these
going?
assets. How do you invest
See the
in
blind
this
moving
kind of
blind.
atmosphere?
Well, Matt, it's great to be with you. Good morning, as always.
Help
We've gone
me.
from purple haze of policy uncertainty to a deep purple reference, I
Brother.
think. You know, geopolitical risk and conflict in particular is
Long
hitting
live the
a
king.
fever pitch here, and I think investors are just going
That's
to
what you guys
continue
be
to get
doing. Be
whipsawed for a
hanging,
while. I'll
asking
give you
like, what do we
another
trade?
fun musical
Bye,
reference.
brother.
It ain't over till it's over. Despite what the posts this morning say, there's just so many conflicting
Post this
reports.
morning.
I think the best way to play it is to stay nimble, stay very well diversified, and buckle up, because this high volatility regime is likely to continue. It's not fancy, but that's the best way to play this environment until we start to see some settling in terms of the conflict.
When you get these headlines, and let's just take today, you get these headlines and a market rallies, risk rallies. We're up 1.4% on the S&P. How do you decide whether that's a move you want to fade or stay away from?
Well, I think, one day doesn't make a trend. So we're not making big moves today, certainly as a function of the news over the weekend and what we've heard early this morning. But we haven't been making big moves. We haven't pulled the ripcord. We haven't raised a ton of cash, moved to the sidelines. If anything, we're looking for opportunities to add to positions. And so, markets off 6% off the high since the beginning of the year.
Positive
That's not much to
retrospect is
write
always
home about.
good.
I mean, you can pick your
You
spots
can always
carefully,
beat yourself
I suppose, and
say,
individual
man, I knew I
names,
should have done that, but
but
at
it's
least
not
you
like
were
we've had
right,
this
right?
material market
If you have
correction.
enough
The
of those
market has been
situations, then
surprisingly
you're finally going
resilient.
to make the
So
right decision.
do we
And
get
then,
another crack at it from here? I think maybe, because
just
we
keep
don't have a lot of clarity,
a
even though we're
good head
getting
on
this
your shoulders,
relief
and
rally
hopefully,
today. As I
shit
said, I
fucking
think
works
there's
about.
still a decent way to go here. And I'm not trying to throw cold
Okay, with
water on it.
this,
I think it's
we
really
automatically got
hard
to get one
to
bite
pick
off
spots
there. I
in
guess
this
that's
moment to reposition
and
portfolios
foremost, right?
tactically. We need to zoom out.
I mean,
If
And
anything,
see
we
what
do
the path
ours
forward
first.
holds.
We
I guess
should
a lot
lead with
depends on
us,
what kind of
and then
investors
we'll
you're
move in with Grandma
representing, right? Although I guess
wanna feel
everybody from
comfortable about our
retail
move,
to
'cause we're
institutional
far
CTAs
more
all want to get kind of neutral, get
zero
kind of flat
importance
here.
to the
Isn't that the
world
case?
Grandma is.
Well, it seems like that's the
And I
most
believe
defensive
our
approach,
trend is
right? To just
just
stay
gonna
neutral,
start.
to hang on for
We
dear
got a
life, right? The
little
technical term
pushback
for
last
you.
week,
I think in
but
an
now I
environment
think
where we have such
backwardation
high
is really gonna
volatility,
set in.
particularly on the bond side of the equation, right? Like, that's not the
And
story
we're
that
a
we're talking
nation
about at the
that
moment,
we're
but
just a
that's
world
actually the
that's
bigger
used to war
story
now.
than what we're
We
seeing
act
in
like we're still
equities
like, oh my god, it's
and
still
this
going
relief
on.
rally this
It's
morning.
just like, okay,
The bond
it's
market
still
isn't
going
a
on.
believer, right? We haven't seen anywhere near as much move there on the news this morning, but the volatility
I feel like
story
this
is
is
way
a
more
large
significant
movement
than what
week.
we're seeing in equities. And so I do think that's an important dynamic here.
And
Equities and
just our
bonds, fixed
strategy is
income,
always
not on
safe.
the same page in terms of the path forward. So,
I think I'm
playing
banking
defense,
on this
staying
shit just
neutral,
moving
staying
really quick.
nimble, hanging on for dear life. That's about all you can ask
We're gonna
for
get
in
in
a
early,
geopolitical
but shit's gonna
conflict
be moving.
scenario
That's
where you
what it
have
is.
really,
I'm gonna.
unfortunately, a very binary set of outcomes.
Across the curve, we
This
are flat to that
volatility, how
point.
does it
Amanda,
work
this
though?
morning we
It's gonna
started with
shoot
yields
up,
higher.
and then that's
The
when
gut
you take
punch
advantage and
reaction,
you
they
roll,
dropped
or you
suddenly
just take
after
that
that Trump
premium.
Truth Social post. And as we get the denials, they moved to unchanged.
This
But we
isn't
were just
about the
speaking with Peter
premium,
Shear
though.
of
This is
Academy
about the
Securities,
backwardation.
who said the time is starting to come that bonds look attractive again. That it's not necessarily inflation that will win out, but it's recession concerns and this uncertainty that might drive investors back to bonds and yields move
It's only
lower.
been 6
What do you
minutes,
think
and
of
I'm
that?
already pressing myself so
Well,
hard.
there's a lot to unpack as it relates to
The
that
first
that
hour, though, the
outlook.
first
We are
30
not a
minutes are
believer
actually
that
crucial
a
as fuck.
recession
That's when the
is
whales
looming
are
large
fucking
here.
sitting.
That
They've
being
been
said,
up.
from a credit
They
spread
wake up before the fucking
perspective,
fishes.
from a volatility perspective as it relates
Yeah,
to
the whales
interest
have been
rates,
up, and then
the
they make this
backdrop
shit
for
around
bonds
like
has
30
gotten
minutes.
more attractive
Move
just from a
everything, and
relative
then the dudes that
valuation
wake up after the
standpoint
first hour are
versus
like, oh my
equity.
god.
So I do think that there are some opportunities
And then
to
everything
pick
settles.
spots carefully.
So
Active
yeah,
management in
let's see what
fixed income
let's see what
is
some
going
movement's
to
looking
rule the
like.
day here. You don't want to be passive in fixed income markets, especially with volatility this high. So
We
I
don't
do
have
think that
moral
there are some
anymore. This
pockets of
shit's gotta update.
opportunity. I don't think it's necessarily a function of recession risk or flows kind of
What do we
clamoring
want right
for
now?
fixed income in this environment. I think it's just the nature of this very dynamic, fast moving market. And I think it's just creating some small near term pockets of opportunity.
What do you think about the big tech stocks, the mega cap Mag 7 play here? It seems like it would be fairly defensive. It was when they were an asset light group. Now, obviously, they have massive capex and debt. But still revenue that you can count on.
And if that's going down,
I absolutely think that those are places where we want to continue to have exposure. We are overweight exposure, tactically speaking, in the Mag 7 and AI related, automation, robotic related plays. I think that will continue to be
speaking of
a really
robots,
bright spot. I think, to your question about defensive business models, asset light, all of those things are still very much the case, with the exception of valuations. We have had a valuation reset since the beginning of the year, but these things are not outright cheap. And so that's the one wild card. Again, if we had a little bit more of a downdraft, not that I'm wishing for more of a market correction from here, but we had a little bit more of a downdraft, we'd really be
you can
clamoring to
bring
pick up
all the
those
market
exposures.
corrections in the
Highly
world if you
valuable,
want,
long
as
runway,
long as I'm
early
right
moves.
about them.
Amanda, thank you very much.
Bring them
PNC
all, as
Chief
long as
Investment Officer
I'm
Amanda Agati. And let's check on
benefiting
your
from
equity
anything.
market right now. 8 minutes
That's what
into
it
your
is. The
trading
world
day.
can do whatever
And
it
as Matt
wants, as
put
long
it,
as
it
we're
is
on the
the
right
big
side
tech
of the
stocks
swing.
that are leading us higher. The breath is pretty good, 445 stocks up. But
Foresight.
look at what NVIDIA is doing at this moment. NVIDIA
Talk about
up
some fucking
2.4%,
intrinsic
adding
value right
12
there.
points
Who's got the
to the
foresight?
S&P 500 this morning. Apple adding 9 points. Amazon adds 6.8. Broadcom, Microsoft, Tesla. Tesla was down in the pre-market. Again, these are companies that are not exposed to the war. They're not exposed to energy prices like some of the consumer-sensitive stocks are, but it just shows you what positioning is doing at the moment, that we are adding en masse. Maybe some of the short positions were hurt. Maybe those things are unwinding. Maybe this is just an opportunity to refresh your portfolio in the volatility. Palantir is also up a lot. On the downside, no surprise, it's the things that have been doing well at the outbreak of the war. So the energy stocks, Exxon, Chevron, they are down at least 1.2%, as is ConocoPhillips. CF Industries, that is a fertilizer company, Lockheed Martin, so some of the military-focused companies like Northrop Grumman also falling, as is Oxy, down 1.7%. If you look at the sectors, everything is doing well except for energy. Energy is down 0.8% as the price of oil falls. Consumer discretionary, that's up 2.6%. Infotech up 2.1%. Joe, if you're in there in the control room, might be worth clicking in to consumer discretionary.
I thought you were going to put, I was looking at month to date, and it's a mirror image of that, which is why it's
that's an interesting one. But I just want to show you what's doing well in consumer discretionary. Norwegian, Carnival, Royal Caribbean, Carvana, again, companies that are really exposed to the consumer, to higher oil prices. They are all rebounding this morning. The question, though, will continue to be asked, is this just a short-term move? Does it say anything about the long-term trajectory of this war? But for now, Matt, we are rallying pretty hard in a lot of these names that have been sensitive to the outbreak of the war. Yeah, the cruise line's really the first thing I thought of when this war started. And they have really been
that's another thing that I'm going to have to do. Once we start getting a little following, we're going to have to talk about these poly markets.
He told U.S. forces to postpone strikes on Iranian energy sites.
People are finally admitting that trading is
his 48-hour ultimatum to a week. More on that next. This is Bloomberg
Unspoken truths in this world, or whatever. I won't say anything if we don't. Back to Schwab, so their commercials are... Oh no, this isn't Schwab either. I'm still disappointed in them. Well, still, okay, Bloomberg's commercials are like Schwab's. They're like still financial. We're not talking about poop. God, Yahoo Finance is trash. That's gonna bother me all day. I'm trying to talk about money and you're talking about poop for an extended period of time. Read the room.
I'm Alex Rodriguez. And I'm Jason Kelly. And we're back with another season of The Deal. With athletes and entrepreneurs who are changing the game on and off the field.
Is that low enough?
Jerry
I'm not sure if that's too low or...
Some good-looking trophies.
1 and 1 is 3, and sports not 2. And it's because that 3
is imagination.
Oh.
Yourself in a way, having yourself.
Erica Ayers-Badon.
I'm a high energy
Talk
I'm very passionate. I have a lot of opinions.
I'm
I want to light fires in people's
interested.
lives, and that is still one of my core mandates
Let's
for all of my
see if this is
businesses.
something.
Justin Tuck.
I tell all of my friends that play in leagues now,
I
make
think
these
we
relationships
found
now
it.
while you're hot. Don't wait till you're like you're at the 12th year in and you're just hanging on.
Stay tuned.
Yes.
You won't want to miss it.
I like this. I think I like this. Baby, I like it.
Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm David Durant.
I'm Lisa Matei. And I'm Christina Raffiti. We're tracking breaking news today from Wall Street to Washington. Let's start overseas. The sector is really propelling this deal forward.
Yeah, the hope is this will open up new markets and provide some additional liquidity.
Of course, now they're going to have competitors. We got a big week coming up in politics.
Earnings season is underway. We're going to get some key reports.
Everything you need to know before the markets open on Monday.
It was a crazy year.
Introducing Bloomberg This Weekend, bringing a little Bloomberg into your weekend routine.
So we had some spikes.
Bringing you up-to-the-minute geopolitical news whenever and wherever it happens. I'm Stephen Engel at Japan's Akasaka Palace in Tokyo, and this is Bloomberg.
Looks like
Welcome to Bloomberg This Weekend. I'm David Durant.
I'm Lisa Matei. And I'm Christina Raffiti. We're tracking breaking
so we're
news today from Wall Street to Washington.
Introducing Bloomberg This Weekend, bringing a little Bloomberg into your weekend routine. Watch, listen, stream.
Technology is embedded in every aspect of our lives.
And laying the foundation for the future.
From finance to defense, AI to entertainment,
and from the road to the stars. Bloomberg brings you the latest stories of the people and companies pushing the tech sector to new frontiers.
And the politics that shape global tech markets.
I'm Caroline Hyde in New York.
And I'm Ed Ludlow in San Francisco.
Watch Bloomberg Tech every weekday.
Only on Bloomberg Television.
Stock prices move. I want to watch the stock prices move. Bloomberg.
We want to see peace in the Middle East. We want
Trump. Right there.
the nuclear dust. We're going to want that, and I think we're going to get that.
Is this the ultimatum?
Yeah, we've agreed to that.
Let's turn this up. Actually, this is the ultimatum.
But we also
is it?
want the
Or no? This doesn't seem official enough.
If this happens, it's a great start for Iran to build itself back, and it's everything that we want. And it's also great for Israel, and it's great for the other Middle Eastern countries, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, all of them, Kuwait, and Bahrain in particular. So it's great for all of them.
Mr. President, do you still need $200 billion?
It's always nice
It would
to
help.
have. Nice
What did I say? It would help. How else are you supposed to answer that? No, we'll only take half. Yeah, or like keep it there just in case. I'm probably gonna call.
Now you know I'm a big believer that they should.
What the heck? You better put that in somewhere and get it moving. I want interest on a Billy or 10. Please. How much did she say? 2? Government people and all that are so annoying.
And I believe they are
acting like that
willing
was
to
$10.
do that.
Not at the airport, but they need to do it when they're out in the
And he's.
The people coming into the airport.
I would crack under the pressure. I can't be just talking to
drug dealers,
jet like
there may be a few of them, but there aren't many. There are people that want to come into the country, or that people want to leave the country.
Give me an account with like 100 mil.
So
that's about
I didn't think it was an
as much
appropriate look
stress
for
as
an
I could
airport.
take.
I think it's a very appropriate look
And
when
you
they're
know,
out
we
on
could
the
be the
street
best fund
trying to
manager
find
in the
one of
world.
the
You've got to be stressed.
11,888 murders
I don't believe you
that
can say
Sleepy
you
Joe
don't.
Biden
That's a
led into our
psychopath.
country.
Elon Musk.
That's a psychopath.
Last year you gave a $10,000 bonus. Sorry.
And actually, I can't even say run because psychopaths are probably the like they keep cool.
It could happen.
When shit's swinging, yeah, I'm giving my money to the psycho because he's gonna be like.
It's not easy for them.
Just wait.
And this is all caused by the Democrats. It's so you know,
just the psychos in only those situations.
This is done. The
Pretty much everything else, yeah, right. Yeah, once they make it out of it, then run.
Come into our country. They want to have
Change
drug
your
dealers.
name and your
They
address
want to have
too. So be
murderers
like,
come into our country. They want to have open
we
borders.
made it out,
and
didn't we?
we're not letting it happen. That's what this is all about. They don't want
Clarice.
voter ID. They don't want
That
proof
was
of
quite,
citizenship. They don't want
quite the bullish
mail-in
market,
ballots.
wasn't it?
They're so corrupt. What they want, the only thing they want
Quite
is
the
mail-in
AUM I had
ballots.
you.
So we
get
also
the-
added, as you know, into the
Come from my feed.
Save America Act, and it's called Save America. It's not the Save Act.
All right,
But
let's
we
get
added,
these
no
contracts back in. Sorry, I
transgender
got.
utilization of our
That's what
children,
Trump does. He
and no
distracts the
men
fuck
in
out of you.
women's sports.
Let's get back to.
These talks go well,
I think I'm gonna make
and you
these
reach
these moves.
if these talks go well and you reach a ceasefire agreement with Iran, do you believe
Because I'm
Israel
still
would
a little
abide by that
fish,
agreement?
and it's only
I think
$600.
will be very happy with
But if we
what we
turn
have.
that
We
into
just
more,
spoke
I'm
to
still
Israel a
gonna be
little while
talking
ago.
my shit.
I think they'll be very happy. This will be peace for Israel, long-term peace, guaranteed peace. If this happens, and I can't guarantee it, but I think it's going to. My life is a deal. That's all I do is deals. My whole
Not
life.
only do I wish that
I think
people would
this
have
is
to wake
something
up
that's gonna happen.
early
And why
just like
wouldn't
me
it
so I
happen?
didn't feel so angry about it, but then I
tomorrow
also wish people woke
morning
up so that
sometime,
the
their
market would
time,
move a lot more.
we were expected to blow up their largest electric generating
Well,
plants
actually, if we're getting into
that
this,
cost
it's just
over
a
$10
low
billion to build.
volume moving thing.
It's a very
That's
good
just,
one. There was no dearth of money.
That's another
And
factor in the moves I will make.
One shot, it's gone.
It's actually good.
It collapses.
I can sit
Why would
pretty
they
on
want
the
that?
stock that I know is not going to
So
move.
they called. I didn't call. They
So
called.
at the end of the week,
They
it's
want to
probably
make a
going to be
deal.
exactly where it
And
is.
we are very willing to make a deal. It's got to be a good deal.
So,
And it's got to be no more wars, no more nuclear
I'm
weapons.
thinking jumping on
They're not
this
gonna
just
have
for the
nuclear
5 is
weapons
cool.
anymore.
That
They're
shit's going to
agreeing
be.
to that. Any of that stuff,
I
there's
think
no
that's
deal.
what we're going to do.
Have they offered to reopen the
How are you
I think I'm going to try to get 6
You said you want
contracts.
to get the enriched uranium. How are you going to get the
No,
enriched
I think I
uranium?
can only
It's
get
very
5.
easy. If we
I'm
have
gonna get
a
5
deal with them,
contracts,
we're going
and then
down and we'll
the
take
last
it
one
ourselves.
with the 25.
The
We're
Treasury,
doing
which
this,
is
bitch. Yeah, what the
sanctioned
fuck?
on Iranian oil that was out
Yeah.
to sea. You criticized President Obama for giving Iran $1.7 billion.
Well, I just want to have as
Yeah,
much
I do.
oil in the system as
He's
possible.
hype.
And
I'll
we
let
don't
you
even
know,
know if
I'll let
Iran
you know.
gets that money. Frankly, I
We're
think it's
doing
very hard
okay.
for
We're
them to
looking
get
at
it. But you have ships that are
NAT.
out there that are loaded
And this
up
is
with
just
oil.
us talking
Rather
shit.
than
This
keep
is not
it there,
financial
I would rather
advice.
see it go to the system.
We're talking
Any
shit. You pull
small
it up,
amount of
do
money
your
that
own
Iran gets
diligence.
is not going to have any difference
And if you're
in
going to
this
be
war.
doing that, you better
But I
tell me
wanna
what you're
have the
fucking trading too, or that's just
system
some
be
one-sided shit.
lubricated.
Even $14 billion, you don't
But
think
yeah, we got some. We're moving for
where's the
$1. I
14
got
billion?
600
the
bucks.
inflated price,
We're
they
about
get
to get
$14
600
billion
of
from
those.
I don't think they're
And
getting
we're
the
gonna
money.
try to
I could tell you,
flip
when this is
these
all over, I will tell you who's getting the money.
low volume
from California,
stock right now.
given that it'll
I just
take
hope
some
that
weeks
it
to arrive
sits,
at the intention
and
to
then
police
every
the
week
trade
they
before
just
taking
go
over.
and expire
Well, it's been
useless,
reported
and then
that
we're
their
just
Marines
sitting.
have left California
This will be
out of San Diego
125 bucks,
last
I think.
week, at the end of the week. Why are they headed
so
there now?
Well, let me ask you this. If you were in my position, and I asked you that question,
And now that we learned how to roll with the options now, I'm a lot more confident. If you have a whole week or two, depending on what cycle you're jumping in or how long you want your time factor to be. But yeah, now that it's so nice to be sitting in the middle of the week. You don't know that you can always just look at the roll options and then sell or buy depending on. It's so nice. These guys thought of these guys and gals thought of every single way to protect their stuff. You just gotta find the technicalities and the fine print. Yeah, there's always a way to hedge your bet and feel a lot safer. And then once you feel safer, obviously you'll stop making emotional trades and decisions and really fucking yourself. Yeah. So let's all calm down and figure out the different types of trades too, widen your horizons. People think just because they know about a fucking limit trade, order, all of a sudden they're fucking geniuses. And I don't even know any goddamn shit, but yeah, broaden your horizons and then you can see just how you can finesse.
Some very smart but radical left and
That's my spiel.
ideology. Sick people.
Now let's get to
These
this.
people have hurt our country very badly.
Are we directly talking with Iran?
Cool. And as I move, yeah, this is cool. I feel comfortable with how stale this is.
Well, I think it's a
feel
lot
good about
different.
this
And
sitting
if you look at the nuclear
for a
weapons
week.
that they wanted to have, that
And
they
then
wanted to
we
possess,
get
a lot of things
this,
are different.
because usually when I find
I'm not a fan of what
opportunities that
Russia's doing either, just so you understand.
make me excited,
all right?
they are like
But
once a
it's
month.
a lot different. You're talking about a country
every
that
week.
has been evil
We
for
are
47
saving
years.
this
They've
to
been
the watch list.
horrible.
That's what
Death
we're doing.
all over the world, not just us. Look at the way they attacked
NAK.
unexpectedly all of those countries surrounding them. It was not
This
supposed to. Nobody was even
Northern
thinking about
Dynasty
it.
men.
But they wanted to take over the Middle East,
what
and
do
they
these
wanted to
guys
knock
do?
out
Is this
Israel permanently. And If they had a nuclear weapon, they would have
This
been able
sounds
to
like
do it.
Min. Is this a mine? Yeah, metals. This is going in the watch list. Yeah.
Look, I'm not a fan of the guy. If you look at and you never
Metals
cover
and
this,
mining,
if you look
with
at his
war
truth
going
for
on,
whatever he went on,
and
it's excellent,
just
true.
everybody
If you look at
dropping
his
everything and
truths or his
becoming
statements,
silver
he
miners.
was all
Yeah,
for everything.
that's funny.
All of a sudden, he wasn't.
Okay. Nah.
He was a man that I
Oh,
met.
sneeze is coming.
at
It's one of
Dover.
those ones that you know
He
you
came and
gotta
his
work
wife was
for.
killed. He remarried.
I might have to call.
fairly
Or I might have to
quickly.
mute for a second.
His wife was killed, and I felt badly for him. He ran for Congress, he lost.
Those are
he
the
ran
worst.
for Congress again, and he lost. I said,
A
you know,
sneeze
he's
is
a
like
guy, nice guy, seemed like a
ruins
very
your
nice
whole
guy. I
fucking
met him, he was
vibe and then just goes away.
pretty heartbroken, pretty. But I said,
That
you
would
know,
be
it's
like a
shame. He
really
ran for
mean
Congress
thing
twice.
to call somebody. You're like
Call
a
him up,
sneeze that
give
just
him a
went
job
away.
in the White House.
Cool.
Smart. They gave him a job in the White House, and this is what he does to me. You know, being a nice guy doesn't pay off too much. Think of it. He loses twice in Congress. Ran not very good campaigns. Should have won. But he loses
If
twice.
it was,
How do I get him? I have my people call him because I didn't deal with him for the most part. I saw him a couple of times, but I never dealt with him at all. I had no idea his ideology was left or right, whatever it is. I can say
oh,
this.
we only need
He
5.
said very strongly that Iran is not
That's
a
what we
threat.
did.
Iran's been a threat for 47 years, and there's not a country in the world that doesn't agree with me on that.
Right?
So I took this guy,
Alright.
Joe Kent,
I'm gonna fucking make
who
this move
lost
for
twice
sure.
for
5
Congress,
contracts.
pretty badly
Yeah.
and tough, and it was devastated. And I know that he lost his wife. So instead of letting him
Who was
live
distraction
out his life,
again?
I brilliantly have my people call him and offer him a job in security, essentially, in the White House. And what does he do? He goes out and he says that Iran is not a threat to get publicity. Now, he probably signed up with CNN,
Did you guys dirty?
or
I looked
maybe
away
signed
and
up
then I
with your
just traded.
division of Newsmax. I don't know, but
Alright,
probably
let's see
signed up
how
with CNN
fast
or
that-
somebody. But if you look at his tweets, X's or truths, whatever he uses, I don't know because I don't follow him. What he said is 100% he agrees with me.
That's just
All of a
probably
sudden he
sitting in
leaves.
there right
I
now
never
as we
knew he
speak.
had a problem.
Can't even get
Now
to
I
my
hear they're
positions
looking
fast
at him
enough.
for leaking. That's
That's what she
possible.
said. Yep, we
But
got
just
him.
so you understand,
Alright, we're
just
in.
to put it to rest,
Okay.
he lost twice badly. He also lost
Let's
his
get
wife.
these
He's remarried
trains.
since. He lost his wife. I felt badly for him. So I told my people, reach out to him, give him a job at the White House. This is the thanks I get. Any other questions?
Overall crime in America. Iran was not an imminent threat, but that's what the intelligence showed.
Imminent threat. I think that Iran.
It's early morning
if we
too,
didn't
so we're gonna be
bomb
greedy.
them
We're
with
gonna
the
try to lock
B-2
these in
bombers,
at
now that set them back.
25.
But if we didn't
Huh?
hit them with the B-2
Oh,
bombers, they
I'm
would have
too
had
excited.
a nuclear weapon within 2 weeks.
I'm really
to a
happy
month.
that they stopped
And
me
if they
from
had
doing
a
that for
nuclear
some
weapon,
reason.
they would have used it as soon
I'm
as
not
they got it.
capable. My account's not capable of buying contracts. It's only I'm only able to sell them. I really
we
like
hit
that
them so
failsafe.
hard we obliterated them,
Oh,
but
you're
that
trying to
doesn't
buy
mean with
stuff
the right
and
equipment,
no,
you
just
can't dig down
sell,
and go
dude.
get it.
Take
We don't
premium
want
and
that,
hope
and
nothing happens.
We won't have that.
Right?
But we obliterated that site. They still haven't
There we
been
go.
able
Yes,
to get
I
it. That was
acknowledge.
a
I
complete
tried to do it a minute ago.
success. But if it wasn't, they would have had. If we didn't hit them,
There we
if
go.
we didn't use the B-2 bombers, which
And
are
note the
unbelievable.
time.
We just ordered
Right
22
within the
more of
first
them.
30.
Modern version, by the way.
Alright,
super modern
let's see how
version.
that sits.
If we didn't hit them with the B-2 bombers, they would have had within 2 weeks of that attack. That's why
Not
we hit
exactly
them.
sure if these
because
are
we knew
butterflies or
they would have had a nuclear weapon. They would have used
how
it
I
on
feel.
Israel
Okay,
and the
hasn't happened
entire
yet.
Middle East.
So we'll let that,
Overall
we'll let
crime
that
in
sit.
Memphis is down 43% since
Okay,
we began this task
our
force.
money
Is this
moves
an
are
important thing?
made.
Well,
Now,
what
let's
I'm
get,
doing
because
today,
we're
really,
also,
this was supposed to be, this was
we
a
also
little bit
have
before, set
the
up a
personal
couple of weeks ago. This was before we
responsibilities, but now
had this,
we also have the fiduciary
situation with
responsibilities.
Iran
So let's get to our
last
client.
night. And by the way, they're just not communicating. When they say, I'm sure they don't
And,
mean that.
well,
when
our
somebody
client,
says, oh, I
yeah,
didn't
we're
know you
saying
were, we were
I can't
talking last
talk-
night.
I can talk
and I'm
about
sure
what
they
I
have
have,
a
but I
lack of
can't talk about
communication, which is appropriate considering we blew up, in addition to their Navy, Air Force, every division, their radar. We
That was
also
still pretty
blew
cool
up all
though.
of
If that
their
works out, I know who I'm
anti-aircraft and
telling.
communication.
Y'all.
So they have no
And
telecommunication. So there is a lack of. I
that
would
is some.
imagine a lack
If
of
that works out, that'll be some privileged knowledge.
We think all we can do is think. Look,
Nothing
we
illegal
have
though. I don't work
numerous
for
leader
anybody
groups.
like that.
They've all been killed.
I'm a
Very
dude in front
dangerous
of a
position.
laptop.
Khomeini was killed.
Just trying to talk
Khomeini's
to a
son is
viewer.
unavailable. Nobody knows what happened to him.
If
I
I had
could
a
say
boom
they
box,
haven't
that would
seen him
be
there either. Something
the
is going
80s
on with
movie.
him. But regardless, I don't consider him.
If we
really
got
a
some
leader.
old souls,
But they
you
do
better
have
put that
some
in
leaders
the
left.
chat, because I'll tell you later after at the end of the at the end of the stream. I'll tell you where that came from. It's a classic.
But we
Your
think we
parents
have
will
people
hug you
that
if
are very
you're my age.
representative of the
They'll be like,
country and will
"Where
do a
is
good
you
job
right?"
in
Elon
representing.
Musk, sir, Elon Musk
I'm
has
saying, I
offered,
don't want my original
Elon Musk has
food.
offered to pay TSA workers during this DHS shutdown. Is
Alright.
this something that you've been
I'm
speaking to him
going to
about?
wait
I love
on the
it. I
first
think it's
one
great. Let
because
him do
that's a
that.
little
And
more.
I want to thank ICE because they stepped in
I
so
can't say more
so strongly.
volatile,
They'll
but
do great.
less.
And if that's not enough, I'll
Even
bring in
with
the
the lack
National
of
Guard. We're not
volatility,
going to have
it's
the
still
Democrats
less
destroy
cut
our
and
country.
dry. Less
These
like I
people
know where
are the
it's
most
gonna be.
destructive, sick people. The
Doesn't make a lot of
Democrats.
sense. It could be
They want-
counterintuitive.
And they're fighting for this. They're fighting for men and women.
But yeah, we're gonna go to this other
They're
one with
fighting
4
for
contracts first, because
transgender for
it'll be
everybody.
swinging, but
Everybody
it'll be
go out,
settling.
get your
And
kid
that's
a
because
nice
that's a weekly
operation
dividend.
and change the sex
Every
of
once
your
monthly.
kid. They're fighting for think of it. They
So
don't want
that
you
obviously
to
could
do
be
voter
a
ID.
very
You walk into a booth in California.
big factor.
If a person who's
But
doing
nonetheless, let's
voting,
get
an
to the
official,
chains.
asks you
Chain
for
gang.
identification,
That's a
they're
thing now,
subject
too.
to being arrested. What's wrong
Probably
with this
already
country?
is a thing with like
So
OG
we're fighting it
traders,
hard.
with
And I think
Young
they should,
Bull,
because
New Money shit.
the
Yeah, chain gang.
Democrats are being blamed
All
for
about
the
that
shutdown,
chain gang
and it's
shit.
their fault, and they're getting killed. That's why
I'm
when I
gonna make
when
that
I
a thing,
announced
like gang
yesterday
violence, but it's
about
the
ICE,
stock market.
the Democrats called. We want to settle. We want
And
to
obviously
settle.
not true
And I
violence,
told the
I'm
people,
not
don't
for it.
settle. Don't settle.
Whole lot
Because
of
we have
games.
something bigger.
Look at
Only
this.
settle
Yeah, I like
if you get
this.
the Save
Okay.
America Act,
Mhm.
voter ID, and so important, proof of
Look at these
citazenship, etc. Thank you very much.
idea was that to put ICE in the airport?
Yeah, grandma's gonna
We're
be
dealing
making
really.
a
Mine. That was mine.
You
That was
Oh.
like the paperclip. You know the
That was
story of the
great timing.
paperclip? 182 years ago, a man discovered
Okay,
the
that was great
paperclip.
timing.
It was so simple. And everybody that looked at it say, why didn't I think of that? ICE was my idea. I called, first person I called was Tom Homan. I said, what do you think? He said, I think it's great. Then I saw today there was some masks on. I didn't think the masks were appropriate. I put out a statement and I asked them, would it be possible to take off the mask? Because they should wear a mask when they're dealing with the murderers and the thugs let into our country.
Just a detail, you said there's many points of agreement with Iran right now.
Many.
What, can you give us a
Many,
those?
like 15 points. 15
$40.
points. Well, they're not going to have a nuclear
$20
weapon.
time?
That's number one. That's number 1, 2, and 3. They will never have a nuclear weapon. They've agreed to that.
Will we see arrests or illegal migrant arrests at airports, sir?
Arrests?
Will we see ICE arresting illegal migrants at airports?
Yeah, that's why the Democrats are going crazy. Because they've allowed, by what they did, and hold up, we put ICE, who are a very high level. I mean, they really are a high level group of people. And they love it because they're able to now arrest illegals as they come into the country. That's very fertile territory. But that's not why they're there. They're really there to help.
Are we talking to Iran directly?
They have. Thank you.
What about the Strait of Hormuz? Who's going to be in control of
That'll
that?
be opened very soon if this works.
How soon? And
We should start high.
be able to control the flow of oil?
Be
Yeah,
jointly
start
controlled.
high.
By who?
Maybe me. Maybe me.
You want the United States to be in
Me
control
and
of
the Ayatollah, whoever the Ayatollah is, whoever the next Ayatollah. Look, and there'll also be a form of a very serious form of a regime change. Now, in all fairness,
Start
everybody's
high.
been killed from the regime. They're really starting off. There's automatically a regime change, but we're dealing with some people that I find to be very reasonable, very solid.
Yeah, it's early as fuck. That's what.
The people
That's
within
okay.
know
That's
who
how you
they
take
are. They're
home
very
my ass check.
respected.
I'm
And
gonna ask Claude
maybe
that
one
right
of them
now.
will be exactly what we're looking for.
I'm gonna
Look
ask
at
Claude. That's a
Venezuela,
good
how
ass
well that's
fucking.
working out.
Well, I
We
can't.
are doing so well in
I could blow a
Venezuela
little
with
smoke
oil
up
and
my
with
ass, right? You
the
could do that.
relationship between the president-elect and
I think that's a pretty good
us.
question to ask Claude.
And
Let's see what are
maybe we
the,
find somebody like that. And
you know, like what are the
Are you hearing any more options to
benefits and the advantages
The
that you
price
could
of oil
take
will drop
in
like a
getting
rock
up
as soon
early,
as
you
the
know?
deal is
There's
done. I
gotta
guess
be
it already
something.
is today. No, we have a
Market
very
movement
serious
that,
chance of making a
you
deal.
know,
That doesn't
only
guarantee
early
anything.
birds
I'm
could
not
get.
guaranteeing anything. I'm not going to come out here in a week or 2 weeks and have
Yeah.
you all say, "Oh, you said." I didn't say anything. All I'm saying
Well,
is
that's ChatGPT
we are
because
in
I
the
like to keep
throes
those
of
separate.
a real possibility of making a deal, and I think if I were a betting man, I'd bet for it. But again, I'm not guaranteeing anything. They want to make a deal very badly. Thank you.
What changes would you like to see in DHS under Mark Wayne Mullen?
Well, he's going to be fantastic. He'll make his own change. He's already given me a list of people he wants to bring.
No,
He's a fantastic guy. I think he's just the right guy. You all know him. He's a very open, smart guy, very successful actually in business, which people don't know, and he's a friend of mine. I think Mark Wayne is going to be fantastic. Thank you.
Are these direct talks for
Terrible. They made a mistake. It's a dangerous business. That's terrible. Thank you.
All right, that was President Trump on the tarmac in Washington, D.C.
It's gotta be a bunch.
Air Force One commentary on
Yeah,
what's
it says
going on with
waking
Iran
up
and
before the
other
market
topics. He
opens
says
isn't just a
the
productivity
US has held,
cliche
quote, good
for
talks with
trading,
Iran
especially
and
what
postponed strikes
you're
for 5
building.
days.
It's a real
Bringing
edge if
the
you use that
9-day
time correctly.
Negotiations have taken
I
place.
thought so.
Brent crude dropped as low as $96 a barrel before
Let's
coming
break
back
it
to
down.
$100.
You get
So
you get the only
broad
calm
comments
window
there,
of
and
the
we'll have
entire
more
trading
reporting
day
on that.
before
This
9
now
a.m.
is the
market
Bloomberg
open.
Intelligence
Well,
Program.
it's
It
6
is
over there.
Scarlet
I'm not
Fu.
sure
It's
where
Paul
y'all are
Sweeney
at,
from the Bloomberg
but it's 6:30
radio
a.m.
studios
over
in New
here.
York
That's
City.
why
We're
I'm a
streaming live
little
on
moody.
YouTube and on Bloomberg.com as well. We want to get right
But if
to
you wake up with the
the
money,
news
it
coming out of
puts a
the
smile on your
Mideast.
face.
We're going to check in with Dan Williams,
No rapid
reporter
price
for Bloomberg
movement,
News. He's
no
based
emotional
in
noise.
Jerusalem. Dan,
Other
who's
than
talking
me.
to whom? Who's standing down? Who's not standing down? What's the latest
No
reporting
execution
coming out
pressure.
of that part of the world?
Even though we still feel it.
Well,
Oh
President
man,
Trump
okay,
is
less
always
pressure.
talkative, and all the more so
This is
during
the only
this
time you get thinky up here.
development
Yeah,
that's really been
strategic, but yeah,
dominating the world
exactly.
news file over the last
After open, everything
2 hours, no
becomes
more than that.
crazy.
What we are seeing is brinkmanship
You
in
can read the
search of
market
a
before it
breakthrough.
moves.
Basically,
What
the
it said.
revelation by the president just
Hey,
12 hours
they're talking
before
about
the
us because
expiration
we
of his
trade Vital.
ultimatum on Iran
Bitcoin
to open the
overnight
Strait of
movement.
Hormuz or face U.S. attacks
Futures for
on
sure
its
because
energy
Vital trades
assets,
with the
on its
futures
power stations. As that deadline was
contracts.
looming, the president coming out with announcements that there had been 2 days of talks,
Yeah,
presumably
logic
behind
instead
the
of
scenes. Obviously,
emotion.
no one knew about these, and that as a
Before the
result,
bell.
he is pushing off that
Yeah.
deadline by 5 days to
Yeah,
enable
okay.
talks
I'm
about
still kind of
potentially
tired,
ending
but
the
yeah,
war.
that
We
makes
just
me feel
heard
a
him
lot
now
better.
at a
And
live
we
media
found knock.
spray elaborating on that. Now, it's worth
Very
remembering
happy about that.
that throughout these last 2 hours, the
Okay.
rat-a-tat of updates, mainly from the U.S. president, and of course,
Let's
the
get back
ensuing
to
rocking of various world markets, which have been stabilizing and then experiencing destabilization anew with each revelation here. The
And with the
Iranians
other
have been
contracts I
denying
got,
this.
I
They've
put
denied
for
there are such
I
talks,
put in for
and
4.
indeed have
We
been
have
openly scorning through
472
official
shares.
media the
Put in
U.S.
for
president,
4.
saying this is basically
Trying
a
to stay
climb down,
safe. I put
that
a
he
dollar
realized he could
over
not
$1 out
work
of the
through
money.
brinkmanship when it came to the Strait of Hormuz,
And
given
then,
what appeared to be Iran's
but
willingness
that's
to respond
why I
to
went
any
on
attack
that
on
time
its
or
power
that
stations,
rant
with
about
attacks on power
the
stations throughout the region,
benefits of getting up
potentially
early.
putting much of the
But
Middle East
then I'm
into
gonna put that
darkness.
as a part of our
So,
plan too.
we
Now,
have
if
the
I'm
U.S.
waking up
president
early
saying
before
these
all
talks are
that, and
underway.
I could make
He
these
said the
calm
talks are with a
decisions,
senior member
I'm gonna
of
up
the Iranian
our limit price
regime, what
and
remains
try
of it,
to
not the
get the
supreme leader.
you
And
know,
he says that he's
because
hopeful
we
for a
got all
breakthrough. He
day
wants
to
a deal.
actually get our
He did
price point. But
reiterate
why
the
not
core
start high
position of the United
and then
States,
lock that shit in, and
echoed
all
by
of a
Israel,
sudden,
that
the
a deal should
more
end
contracts, all of a
uranium
sudden that's
enrichment,
extra
should deny,
$50,
presumably
$100.
permanently or for the very foreseeable future,
And then if it does, you know, if we can't
any
lock that
access
in,
the Iranians might
you
have to
know, and
nuclear
it's still
weaponry.
like a few
And
hours
there
before
is some
close, then
wriggle
we'll
room
go
around
to the
what will happen
actual
to the
number
Strait of
that,
Hormuz. It would appear that
you know,
that
start high.
chokehold on international
We wake up
energy
early,
is
that's
what
what
has
we
brought
earn.
the U.S. president and potentially what remains of
Or
the
not
Iranian
earn, but you know,
leadership
that's
to this
the reason
place,
why we did that shit.
potentially on the verge of a breakthrough.
Dan, thank you for wrapping
So
all
yeah,
of that up. And as
that's
you
why I brought
mentioned, Iran has said
that
that
up and I
it
said
did not
BTs.
have
But
direct
yeah,
or
so we
indirect
set that
communication
high.
with
I was
President
at,
Trump.
I was gonna do it at
President then
like
said the
15,
U.S.
but
was
I
talking with
bumped
the
it up to
top
20.
person in Iran, but
I
not
said,
the
you know,
supreme leader.
and then we'll see,
What do
and
we
then we'll
know
just
about
slowly
other
dwindle
countries'
down until people
involvement
actually
in any
are
kind of
serious
back
about their
channel discussions
decisions.
with Iran? We're talking about, you know, Turkey, Saudi Arabia,
So
Oman.
yeah, that's
Are they
that, and then
involved?
I'm
How involved are
feeling
they?
like doing that with this too, and we
By
can
every
put out
account,
8
yes,
with this
they
one. We
have
got
been
800
involved. These are
shares.
countries with
I
obvious
love it.
interests, energy, and other geostrategic interests
And we're
in
playing
not
it
seeing a
safe
very
because there's
further
no
spiraling
reason
of
to
this war.
just get
Keep in mind we're
crazy
now in
if
the fourth week of a
you
war
gotta
that
I
while
can't. You
both
can
the
never say
Americans
sure
and the
thing,
Israelis
but
who launched
playing
it
it
in
safe
concert
means
on February
you're
28th
pretty confident.
say it's been
And you
going
gotta
according
worry
to
about
schedule, and in
somebody
fact,
taking
ahead of schedule in some
your stock.
respects, and they're willing
Ownership,
to go
ownership,
it for another
ownership.
several
Always,
weeks. The Iranians have said from the outset
always try to
that
own
they
stuff.
have
Yeah, so
budgeted
we don't
arms
ever want
and
people
other
actually
assets for
calling
a
our
6-month war. There
calling
was
our
no
contracts.
sign of the
We'd like
Iranian
to,
regime
by the end of the week,
collapsing.
take
The
whatever
Israelis and the
premium
Americans
we
had hoped
can
that at
and
some
keep our
point in
shit
this
at the
war,
end of the day.
with enough damage inflicted on the regime,
That's
there
over
could be an
here,
upswell, a
that's
groundswell
the way that
of
I
opposition within Iran
look at it.
to remove a
So,
weakened
plain
regime
and safe,
organically, including
we're
last
gonna go
weekend during the
two
Persian New Year,
slots
which is
out of the blue,
generally a
out
time
of the
for
money. I'm not sure
holidaymakers
what your
and
setup
festival
looks like,
goers
but
in Iran
mine's
to come
blue
out
and
to the
white,
streets.
blue
Obviously,
and the
that
money.
didn't happen now in the midst of a war, but there was hope that might mark a change in the situation
Dang,
internally. It didn't happen.
yeah,
It would
people are,
appear that the U.S. president is doing a recalculation, given the
yeah, that's a
spiking
little,
rise in oil prices,
that's not the
given the
premium that
lack of
let's see.
international support other than Israel militarily for breaking that deadlock over the
As
Strait of
well,
Hormuz,
just
given the
how far,
doggedness
should we
evinced so
jump
far by
$1?
the Iranian regime. He's perhaps
It's
doing
only
a
20 cents.
recalculation. It's worth remembering this is quite a wily president.
I'm
He's
pretty
known to pull
sure we're
ruses,
gonna see some
tactical and
backwardation now, because
strategic.
we saw it
It could
last
be,
week.
and
It
this has
was,
already been speculated on by
we
some of
saw
the
it.
Iranian
It
media,
doesn't even
that
matter
this
the
is
size
another
of it,
ruse,
but we
another
saw
attempt
it. So
to
it
bring
was a
down Iran's
stabilizing
guard.
movement.
Officially, the U.S. position
Like
is
it could
now
have
the
kept going
deadline
down.
that was to be 10 hours from now
People are
has
like,
actually been put off by
I'm
a few
glad
days.
it
It's now
stopped.
5 days
Yeah,
hence.
nobody's like,
So we haven't pushed
that shit's
away the
gonna go
specter
up.
of escalation. As
I
far
don't
as the
think
Israelis are
I
concerned,
don't
the
feel
war
safe about
continues.
that. Yeah, we might
In
have to
fact, they
wait on
carried out
this.
another attack in Tehran
Or
just
no,
an hour
oh,
ago.
see, this is,
So
yeah,
one
this falls back into the new
without some sort of
strategy, yeah.
confirmation,
Time,
without some sort
the
of
time
cooperation
factor,
and open
data.
statement, potentially
Because
and
I don't feel
preferably
good
on
about the
record by
premium
an
right
Iranian
now,
leader,
but
it's very
rolling,
hard to know how
those
solid
premiums, as
this
soon as the day
overture
goes
by the
by,
Americans
these
are.
fuckers
I
wake up in
imagine
the
that will
morning and
come
like,
through in the
okay,
coming hours.
sales
The
go up,
Iranians
all
will
of a
be doing their
sudden,
own calculations as to
these
whether
8
this
contracts
is a
are worth a
breakthrough that
whole,
should be
yeah.
embraced
See,
and
this
put
is,
forward
yeah.
until it's
And I know
solidified, or whether they're going to stick by what appears to
what is this?
be
Is
their
already
official position,
timestamp 7
that the U.S.
7
president
a.m.
is
over here
effectively backing
on a
down,
Monday morning,
effectively admitting
Friday.
defeat. It's worth
It's gonna
remembering
be
that
higher
whatever
than
the domestic value of the
I
Iranians
believe.
saying this to the
Biden's gonna
beleaguered
be
regime, the beleaguered
higher.
population after 3 weeks of
It's
war,
not gonna,
this
yeah, it's
isn't
not
a
gonna be
president who
here.
takes such
So
slights
we're
lightly.
gonna.
He may see a grievance in them. They may want to reconsider that if they are considering the potential for a breakthrough here.
Dan
And we
Williams,
don't
thank you
have
so
to
much,
do the
Dan Williams,
whole
for the
8 hour. I
comprehensive
think I
summary of
might
what's been
split.
going on
I
in
might
the Middle
split
East.
it up
He
too.
is one of our Bloomberg reporters
I think I'm gonna
based in
do
Jerusalem, so we go to
4.
him to get the on-the-ground reporting.
Great reporting there. We appreciate
Well,
that.
actually, I mean, what's the
Right now,
difference
let's get a little bit of a
between
reset here.
$2?
Markets are rallying.
Should we spread them?
Christophers and a Bloomberg Business Flash. Alexis.
All right, thanks, Paul. A possible de-escalation in the
Little-
war with Iran is sending oil lower and stocks higher. President Trump has postponed strikes on Iranian energy infrastructure for 5 days as the U.S. and Iran enter talks to end the war.
No,
Iran's
I'm
foreign
kinda,
ministry
no,
denies
'cause then
it's
you
in
gotta
talks
worry
with the
about
U.S. The S&P
getting too
500 now
different.
up 115 points, a gain there of nearly 2%.
Oh, I mean,
Dow
we can
Jones
always
Industrial average
structure
up
it
2%
as like a,
or
what are they? Is that a
900 points.
condor, I
Just
believe?
3
That
of
would
the
be the
30
first
Dow
time I ever
stocks
did
are
a
in the red.
condor
That
or
would
an
be
iron.
Procter & Gamble, Coca-Cola, and Johnson & Johnson.
I'm just gonna do
NASDAQ
one. We'd have
Composite
to,
up 432
some
points. The
research
Russell
on the
2000 up
different structures
73
of the
points.
option
We've got Brent
trades.
crude pulling back down 10% at $100 a barrel. WTI crude now below
Yeah,
$89
right now
a
I'm just
barrel.
gonna do the
And in
one,
stock news,
but it's
Fannie
the
Mae and
same
Freddie
laziness
Mac are said to have
concept.
begun
They
placing
do
sizable
that
orders
structure,
for
so when they go
mortgage-backed
back,
securities as
that's
part of
all
the
I'm
Trump
worried about,
administration's push to drive
the
down
legs of
mortgage
it
rates
all.
and boost housing
But I'm
affordability.
just gonna do
Shares
the
of
8.
Fannie Mae up better than 4%. Freddie
8
Mac
at
up
a very, very safe,
4.5%, and the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index down slightly at
safe price. But I
1205.93.
truly
That's
believe
your
that this is
Bloomberg
gonna
Business
go up.
Flash. Paul and Scarlett.
All right, Alexis, thank you so much. We appreciate
I
that.
feel like
Scarlett Fu
Bitcoin
and Paul
in general
Sweeney, this
is
the
gonna
Bloomberg
have, it's
Intelligence
gonna
Program
start
Roundtable
marching.
Bloomberg Radio
It's gonna
Studios
find its
in
place
New York City. We're streaming live on
in this
YouTube
whole
and on
global
Bloomberg.com, as well as Lexus was just reporting we have stocks rallying here today
unrest.
on the back of
I really wish
President
people would just get
Trump's
along.
social
That's really
media
dumb.
post about a pause in the war
You
in
guys
Iran.
still care about
Let's take a
somebody
look
in
at
the
some of
sky
stocks
telling you
on
what to
the
do,
move today.
so
We can
let's
do that with
bomb each
Bloomberg's
other.
Isabel, what are you looking at?
Fucking retarded.
I was first looking at energy
Don't
stocks,
care what anybody
and they're
says,
going the opposite direction.
including the guys in the
Let's use
sky.
Exxon, ticker is XOM, and you see the chart. It's
Kinda
just
got
a straight line up. It started
kinda
in the
got some
negative,
beef
and
with you,
when
dude.
markets open, it was positive,
Whatever.
and now it's
Alright, let's
flat
get these locked
right
in.
before my eyes. Another big one is the ticker is VG Venture Global. That has been a seesaw. ticking between positive and negative, and I feel like markets are really just digesting. I mean, President Trump
I'm only
did
gonna
say
do
oil
4
prices
now.
will drop like a rock when the deal is
Gosh,
done. And
now
I
I'm
feel like
being iffy.
that's
This is
exactly what this
emotional
is.
trading.
Traders were caught off guard. There have been a little sign of diplomatic progress, and just hours
I
earlier, we
still
had
have a
Israel
plan though. I'm gonna do
launching
4
strikes on the
now. We're
Iranian
gonna wait to
infrastructure,
see
and
if
now we
there's
have
any movement.
this. I read some of my notes, and it said that it's a very crowded
Because I don't
trade, so
want to lock.
maybe if
Yeah,
some
because if
unwind
there's
is
some
being done, any
premium
move
that we
will be
could get.
exaggerated. But yes, confusing
There's
market
some
for
premium
energy stocks.
later
I thought it
after
would be a
the
clean
weirdos
story.
wake up.
Well, I mean, it's worth
We'll try to
mentioning,
see if we
as you
got
pointed
harvest
out,
that,
how
but
well
these are
energy
gonna
stocks
be
have
locked.
done overall, right?
Yes.
They're the only gainer among 11 groups in the S&P 500
Yes.
so far this month since the start of the Iran
4
war,
now
up
before
6.4%,
everything.
and
4
for the
later
year,
after
they're up
everything.
about 32% as
Oh,
well.
wow.
And then
Yeah.
I think we
Now,
got a
what do you
good
have
spread
next,
over
Isabel?
the volatility.
MongoDB,
and then-
so it's not related to any
That's all I
geopolitical
might do.
headline. Shares are in the green, up by more than 6%.
Okay, so
We have
open, we're
Mizuho
doing it out.
Securities upgrading the software company
One's
to
the only option.
outperform from neutral. So the analyst there said that the
Option.
company has a growth profile that has
Yeah, that wasn't
inflected
that funny.
meaningfully, and they see AI as a structural tailwind. So again, it's an AI story. The stock has
Yeah.
a meaningful margin upside also, according to the analyst. Stock
This
is
is
down
still
now, though,
safe,
around 38%
experimental.
for the year. But
Let's see
still,
if this
lots of optimism
volatility,
there.
let's see
Price
the
target is set to
beta
$325 from $219.
kicks in our direction.
Database software
In our
company. Okay,
favor.
that's what that is. So they're automating, monitoring, and deploying.
And then
Yes.
fingers
backups.
crossed, yeah,
So
there it
you
goes
go. So
up.
that's stock movement. Okay, good stuff.
Fingers
there.
crossed,
One more.
backwardation
DraftKings
over
ticker
the week, and we're sitting
DKNG. We
at
have
a
the
higher
stock
place, prettier.
up by nearly
Friday.
6%. We have Wall Street Journal reporting that U.S. senators are set to introduce bipartisan legislation
And we're
to
always
ban sports
feeling a lot
bets
more
on prediction markets. So
comfortable with the
this is going to
options,
be a boon for them,
the
obviously, because then if
options
Kalshi and
rolling.
Polymarket won't be able to do that, then it'll be good for them. And the bill pertains to entities regulated by CFTC. So Kalshi and Polymarket are
Yeah, that's it.
the biggest
then,
in this space, and I feel like almost everyone is just
Yeah,
talking
we're just,
Kalshi and Polymarket. So
15 minutes
it's good news
outside.
for them.
Yeah,
Even an
still
ETF,
early.
there's a
All
prediction
right, we gotta
markets
get back to
ETF.
studying.
Ah,
That was
I
the
mean,
fun
that's
part.
not a
That's the
surprise.
fun
There's
part.
an
Like
ETF for
Hunter,
everything.
just we can
Absolutely.
always
Have
go
you ever
back
used
to see
prediction
if
markets, Isabel?
our
Only for
contracts.
reporting. Like I would look at it, but I don't in real.
We have to pass
Do you
this
know
test
anyone
though.
who uses it? Paul, do you?
I don't use it, but I know a ton of people do use it,
Let
and
me
I
check
see it
real
in
quick and then
I see it in reporting and just people just talking about
Because I'm in a
you know,
better mood. I might
what's
do
happening
more
out there, and
answers.
they'll source it as
Right.
as
As a
real
source of information,
Yes.
right? But
Yes,
are they
yes,
are
yes.
they actively engaging in
I
it?
don't know
Are they
anyone.
actively placing bets?
I'm also not the big better. If I bet, it's like buy me chocolate, but
No, not yet.
Exactly.
Do you
But
know
It's
anyone?
getting bigger
Nah.
and bigger.
No, I don't.
It's
And I'm trying to
still
understand
there.
outside of sports whether people are really
Right.
using it. Sure, I know around the time of elections it becomes a way
Yep.
to kind of gauge where the public sentiment is. But beyond that, are there people who actively put positions down?
I don't know. I'm guessing there are, just by judging by the people
Well,
who
it shows
use it
that
on their
must
phones
come
and do all
down.
that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it does, but it would be a big move for the betting sites there. Isabel Lee, thank you so much. We appreciate that. For more conversations like this, subscribe to our Stock Movers Reports. Listen for 5-minute audio reports on the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. Subscribe to Stock Movers on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere you listen. So, Scarlett, just trying to put into context what we've seen so far this morning. And again, Tom and I were here at 7 o'clock. We
All right,
saw
let's
the
pump
social
out
media
at
post come
least
across
like
the tape,
10
and
questions.
boy, the
Come
markets
on,
moved
a little bit.
instantly on that. And my
Installations.
guess is what happened here is what happened during the tariffs. President Trump got down to Mar-a-Lago. He's with his friends. He's with his people he's comfortable with. And I bet a lot of people come up and said, listen, you got to end this thing. I mean, if you just, and I think what it was the bond market again, we saw kind of really as the catalyst here. He's got a lot of friends down there that are in the real estate business and they're sensitive to interest rates. And we've seen interest rates move higher.
Almost made that mistake again. I'd be
inflation,
hitting the
which
wrong
interest rates
tab
higher.
and showing
Absolutely.
urgent.
Now you
There
have
you go.
people betting that the Fed's next move could very well be a rate hike. I mean,
Exactly.
it's not gone past 50% odds for some time this year, but just the fact that previous
Back
to
at it.
this
This is the
war
big
in Iran,
test,
even
though.
just
This
a
is,
week ago, people were
this
counting
is
on
gonna
2
be a
interest rate
game
cuts this
changer.
year.
Yep.
They're now pricing in the possibility of
the
a rate
65,
hike and definitely
game
no rate
changer.
cuts this year.
And
Is
this is just
alarming
in
for a
general.
president
Like I
who
swear,
is
anybody should
pushing
want to
lower
pass
rates
this
as a way
test.
to keep the U.S.
Just the
economy on
financial
solid ground.
literacy of
Right,
it
so,
all.
I mean, this is something we probably
Game
always
changer.
thought that at some point the president would wake up
Ow.
and said, I'm tired of this. I've had enough. I've achieved all the objectives we've set out for. Now's the time to move on to something new.
The
And
tricky
maybe
part
that
of
Bullet
today is today.
strategy.
Yeah, the tricky
is
part of it
most
is
appropriate
we
for
never got a
investors
full
who
understanding of
want
what the
maximum
objectives of
liquidity
the
at
military
all times.
strike was.
That's when it
So
gotta
at
bite
some
the
point,
bullet.
yes, the definition could
okay.
change, but no one was
Test
sure on what
strategy.
and whether it's been achieved.
Always
And then,
read every
to me,
answer.
probably the bigger question, I guess, and why we're not seeing even a bigger decline in oil is you just don't know if this war were to end, soon, what does it mean for the security?
Oh,
of
see, I would have
the Strait
fucked
of
myself
Hormuz? Yeah,
already.
I think
See,
we've all
I was
come
so
to understand
confident.
if we
No,
didn't
it's yeah, it's
understand it
the
before.
has a specific
It's almost
future cache
impossible to
need,
secure
and
that thing,
yeah, wants to
unless
pull
you
the
have
trigger.
boots on the ground in Iran, which nobody
Mhm.
wants. So I guess if
See
you're
y'all.
the energy industry, you're going to have to
Yeah,
count on
that's
some
when,
higher level of risk in that part of the
yeah,
world.
they pull the
That's a
trigger
good point. And
make a
even
quick
if
money
things
move.
were to work perfectly and there's some kind of resolution tomorrow, it will take
It's just a 30.
weeks, if not months, to get the Strait of Hormuz operating once again as
Those are
normal.
solid.
So, like,
Right.
everything could end. The hostilities could end, and it won't be like a snap of the finger where things go back to normal.
Because there has been some damage to some infrastructure
Motion
in
here.
that part of the world from the two sides, and that will take, we've seen anywhere from 3 to 5 years to repair that. So again, it'll take a while for that part of the world to get back to quote unquote normal functionality, I guess.
And just an
Inflation
add-on to our conversation earlier,
is
Tim
not
Stenovic
a
mentioning
deal
that
to him.
Kalshi's CEO
Is
had
inflation
told
a big
Bloomberg
deal?
last week that they have
What's
400,000
good
users
with
in Arizona. So
inflation?
clearly there are people who are using the
I know
prediction
healthcare and
markets.
all that.
You and I may
Healthcare,
not know who they are, but
They're
I'm
out
sure
there.
they're out there.
something
Absolutely.
that I'm
All right,
pretty
coming up, we're
sure
going to
they-
check in with Steve Sostek.
healthcare,
He's the chief
and
market
then
strategist at
utilities
Interactive Brokers. Get his thoughts
are
on
to
these
hedge
markets, which are
against
changing
inflation.
by
I
the
don't
minute.
know.
S&P up 127 points. That's about
Equities do well, I
2% here,
think.
near the intraday high. This is Bloomberg.
Fuck. Should we just use our... I'm gonna use my free hints. I gotta start using them more often anyways. Use up free shit. Yeah, we got 10 today. We should actually just get a hint on every bullshit. This, just understanding different types of investment risks. It's actually very important, yeah. Non-systematic. That's what you could diversify against. Yeah, there we go. It was reduced or eliminated through diversification. Think about what happens. Yeah, you're fucked. All your eggs in one basket. Oh, that's what. Okay, yeah, his shit's very diverse. Not only the sectors are diversified, but also the risk, the risk, specific risks are diversified. So not only like inflation risk or business risk, financial risk. They're all three rather than just one risk. Huh? Cool. Significantly impact this fight. Fuck. Why do I feel like I feel so dumb sometimes because I was supposed to help. Okay, so he's very diversified, which means that got it. Unsystematic risk. Non-systematic risk. Let's go. Thank you, hints. Thank you, hints. Okay, we just gotta work on not wasting so much time on one question, but nonetheless, the less that we get wrong. Cool. Oh, I like that. That was good. Proper. I think we learned something. Cool. Thank you for being so patient with me on that. Time weighted return differs from time. Time has to do with the fund manager. Oh. It's only used for individual. No. It's a great question at this point. Internal rate of return.
markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio, I'm Alexis Christoforous. Before boarding Air Force One today, President Trump told reporters that the Strait of Hormuz will reopen soon under joint control with the U.S., but Iranian media denies negotiations have taken place. Nevertheless, the president's comments sparking a big rally on Wall Street. S&P 500 now up better than 2% or 134 points. Dow Jones Industrial Average up about 2.25%, a gain of 1,012 points, now trading at 46,586. Nasdaq Composite up better than 2% or 506 points. We've got shares of Synopsys up 4.5%. Activist Elliott Investment Management has built a multi-billion-dollar stake in the chip design software maker. And shares of DraftKings up 5%. Flutter up nearly 7%. That's after the Wall Street Journal reported that U.S. senators are set to introduce bipartisan legislation to ban sports bets on prediction markets, including Kalshi and Polymarket. Over to the oil pits we go. Brent crude down 10%, now at $100 a barrel. WTI crude also down about 10%, trading below $89 the barrel. And spot gold unchanged, we'll call it, at $44.90 the ounce. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News Now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Alexis Christoforous. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Paul and Scarlett.
All right, thank you so much, Alexis, for that Bloomberg Business Flash. It's only an hour into the start of U.S. trading for the week, but it feels like it's been a week already. I mean, Paul, you were here at 7 a.m. when the president tweeted out or posted on social media.
Yeah, futures were soft, negative here. Then the tweet came out and just instantly just ramped
Everything
up.
reversed, and it was like off to the races. And right now you have the S&P up more than 2% along with the Nasdaq. We have with us right now Steve Sosnick. He is chief strategist at Interactive Brokers. And Steve, I guess if you want to simplify it, it feels like we have a taco trade taking place. Trump always chickens out. He backpedaled and has said that there's discussions that are going well, even though we've heard from Iran that that is not the case. How are you putting into perspective what we've seen just this morning?
What we're seeing this morning, Scarlett, is just the market is getting what it wants. And what it wanted was some sort of reversal. Basically, almost you got us into this, you get us out of this. And whether it's not even necessarily relevant whether the Iranians are speaking to them or not, because we've heard this kind of stuff before. The consultation with the former presidents that no former president said
you got to think institutions are in here for the long haul.
Less relevant to the market. It's hearing what it wants to hear, and it's finding out that whether it's the taco trade or, as I prefer to think of it, as the Fed.
It's early in our journey.
On Friday, I literally asked the question, what's the strike price on the Trump put? And we learned today, depending on your metric, it's either 445 on the 10-year or it's 6,500 on the S&P.
Why?
Pick one.
That doesn't explain why. Wow.
What do we do now? I mean, let's put the geopolitics aside and make the assumption that it will resolve itself in some reasonable amount of time. Get us back to fundamentals. What are the fundamentals that you think are driving this market either
Class C
upward or down?
Short, Class A
earnings,
front end load.
If we continue to get out of this in a relatively easy manner, then earnings picture should remain relatively stable, and that's been obviously one of the key pillars to keeping this market afloat. Another one, however, though, was the resumption of interest rate cuts, and we've taken them off the table. I'm looking right now at the WIRP function. It's zero for 2026. Now, last week it was looking for rate hikes, so I guess this is better, but the rate picture is not really improved. We need the oil picture to improve, and we don't really know how and when this is going to normalize. And if nothing else, if I were an insurer of these tankers, I'd be charging a bit more for insurance until such time that it's clear that these things are getting through.
Purchasing
so there
power.
are still, just because and also output has decreased. So as usual, I watch oil and bonds, and you'll see today they're responding well, but not as euphorically as stocks are. Stocks have a different type of psychology.
A different type of psychology, but and right now you have all 11 groups higher with consumer discretionary and industrials, tech, materials, very cyclically oriented companies leading the way.
Reinvestment
so far this year, however, it's energy
buying
stocks all the way.
Purchasing
and so far
power
this
and
month, it's energy
reinvest.
stocks all the way. Is that still kind of the safe play right now?
It's not an unsafe
has
play,
most
but again, I think that
them
as we saw sort of with gold, we get a little enthused in one direction, and maybe that's not the way to play this coming out. If this indeed is the beginning of the end, so to speak. I think in general, we had this move toward value. We had this move toward economically sensitive stocks. That went into reverse when it appeared, when it looks like the economy could be slowing down. I think people are going to be dipping their toes back into that. And also, what was interesting was the Mag 7s actually acted reasonably well because in some ways they're perversely a flight to safety in this environment.
So, again, putting some of the geopolitics aside for the moment here, U.S. versus rest of the world, we saw in 2025
reinvestment
the rest
risk.
of the world, many of those markets outperformed the U.S., which had very good equity returns as well, but some of the other international markets did better. Is that still the case here
Hard
in 2026?
secularly.
I think
that was
to
a hard
some
one.
extent, part of that was
rising. Exam tip.
I'm not going to say
rising
sell America
CPI
trade, but
equals
let's
inflation
look
equals
elsewhere.
purchasing
Let's notice
power
that there's
risk.
a whole big wide world out there. Now, obviously, some of the international markets that had done the best, really went into retrograde very quickly. Some of the worst returns have been that we've seen recently have been in Korea, have been in Japan. On the other hand, Japan's still up 2% for the year, by the way, despite having fallen like 3.5% last night. And undoubtedly, it will rally if this rally holds in the U.S. But I think in general, people were looking elsewhere because of the recognition that there's value elsewhere, and maybe the U.S. is not the only game in town, or the cleanest dirty shirt, whatever analogy you want to use.
Yeah, they did.
I think that persists, but not to the same degree. I think it just sort of, the political instability, I think, does keep some of the international money closer
accredited,
to home.
and then.
Steve, when investors get concerned about oil and inflation, the comparison seems to always be the 1970s, a very extreme example. Then when there's fear about credit blowing up,
no, I'm
the
not. He said
comparison is 2008, but things aren't always that extreme. So I guess my question is, what kind of...
that lady said...
How does that limit investors' way of looking at the
That's
world
still
and what the
mind-boggling.
possibilities are when
They were
everything is
talking
being
about
compared to like the most extreme
billion,
example
like it was
possible?
nothing.
Yeah, this is,
and then I got mad at
rhymes,
myself
but it
for
doesn't
saying
repeat
100
kind of thing.
million.
And I think people are listening for the rhymes. Jerome Powell was pretty clear that we are not in the 70s, despite the fact that the market just did not like what he had to say regardless.
1 million.
But, we're not there yet. And as I've mentioned before, not today, but in various times you and I've talked, Paul, that the market had this scenario had always been for $150 to $200 a barrel oil. So we didn't get there. So we're not seeing that same. We're not as energy independent. Energy dependent as we were. So it's a useful paradigm. And again, I had a very prominent restructuring attorney tell me a couple of weeks ago, just over lunch. Oh, by the way, we're in 2008 again regarding credit.
Max 1 year.
Where did that come from? We weren't even talking about this. But this is, these people, it's psychological. People gravitate toward stuff they recognize, and that becomes the working paradigm until we realize it may or may not be exactly the same.
What's screening well for you guys these days? Either a sector or a factor? And I know there's a lot of noise out there, a lot of crosswinds out there, but what's screening well for you guys?
I mean, what's screening well is for people who can play both sides, is short-term trend following. If you can stand the volatility, one of the risks to a lot of different factors is if you have unstable short-term fixed income, if you have instability in the stable stuff, where do you go for the? Where do you go in terms of looking for stability elsewhere or factors that work? So I think right now
we own it in U.S.
Nothing screens particularly poorly relative to the other stuff. Nothing screens particularly well because it's just so up in the air. And this is, I think we need a little bit of stability for this to come through. And a lot of it, again, depends on whether today's psychological excitement holds.
When I get confident.
How worried are you about private credit? You mentioned that attorney had mentioned it's kind of 2008 all over again. The weak link here is obviously private credit in the fixed income world. How are you thinking about it? I mean, there's a lot of concern percolating out there, but so far it hasn't really spilled over into public credit.
This is the hard part, is precisely because it's unknowable. We don't know what's going on. We don't know which marks are bad, and that sort of leads to the cockroach theory, et cetera. But what happens here is people get nervous, and we definitely saw people getting nervous. And at its simplest form and its most benign form, it's a liquidity mismatch. People want out. People, this was sold supposedly to, long-term, hardcore investors who would stick through thick and thin. And guess what? It's not everybody who owns it feels that way, and they want out. So you have a rush to the exits.
I thought we were buying in the U.S.
The problem is you can come up with all kinds of negative scenarios that occur when you have liquidity mismatches. And the problem here is what's underlying a lot of these loans is private equity that may or may not be mismarked in and of itself. And so I think until you get a little bit of sunshine as a disinfectant, people are going to be nervous. And the problem is the stories that have been leaking out for the most part are either redemptions that are being held up or the headline-grabbing stories of some loan that was marked at par and, oh, by the way, it's marked at essentially zero. So until you sort of see some stability, until sort of the pig in the python clears out in terms of the private equity redemptions, it's going to be prove me wrong, basically.
We had Gary Gensler in here, former SEC chair last week, and as it relates to this private credit issue, he was saying, hey, just put it in context. Private credit's a $2 trillion industry in the context of a total capital markets of $120 trillion. So just
he's still a U.S. investor. The euro went down, and U.S. investor has more buying power.
You mentioned the work function earlier. I mean, it looks like
so
the market
his dollar went up.
Is going to do it. And is that reflective of what the Fed is doing? Is the Fed saying, we're going to be sitting on our hands here for the time being?
Well, first of all, by definition, they have to, because we don't know when the new Fed chair is going to take office.
When the euro weakens against the dollar, European investments are worth fewer dollars when converted back to the investor's home currency.
This year, coincidentally, my price targets for the year were 6,500 on the S&P and 445 on the 10-year. Which,
wow, calling it.
Yeah, well, I'm not spiking the ball yet. It's it's the first quarter. There's a lot can go wrong with that prediction too. But one of the things that made me very cautious was
that's why you keep it in-house.
New Fed chairs always get a real-world test, and I think the market is already setting up the parameters of the midterm exam for the starting exam for the new Fed chair, and so we'll have to see how Kevin Warsh deals with it. He's historically relatively hawkish, but he's obviously basically had to play a very dovish tone. So let's see where that takes us, and I think markets are understandably
I'm pretty sure that's
curious of how this is going to play out, especially now with the backdrop of higher energy prices potentially bleeding into the rest of the economy.
All right, very good. Steve, thanks so much. I appreciate you coming into our studio. Steve Soshnick, he's the chief strategist for Interactive Brokers. And let's start with just kind of what's happening in the oil market here. We've got Brent crude down almost $11. That's 9.8%. We're sitting at $101.20. The low intraday, we did get down to $96 earlier. WTI crude oil, our friends down in the oil patch, down 9%. Just under $90 per barrel, so that's the kind of news we're seeing. Negative crude means positive equity prices. S&P's up 130 points, about just under 2% gain in the market there. The Nasdaq's up 480 points. That's 2.2% increase. Major
sales charges are lows. Front end or back. When a broker deals with acts as a broker, agents. That's just information. A dealer is a markup or a markdown. Which business entity provides limited liability protection for all owners while it's an LLC. Alright, I think I'm gonna. What time is it? Oh, we're 6 minutes over the first. Yeah, we'll go to 25 and then we'll look at our right out of the. Oh yeah, let's see what happens. A lot of people are still not even fucking up. That's usually around 8:30, give or take. I'm not acting like I know everything. Yeah, nonetheless, 2 more questions, and then yeah, let's see how that first hour affected us. Let's see if those contracts. Okay, 2 more questions. Which type of risk can be reduced to? Unsystematic. Besides the double tax. Read them all. Read them all. Can issue multiple classes of stock. Does not provide limited liability to shareholders. Can have unlimited. I'm still pretty sure about the double taxation thing. Yep. That is just the one thing. C corps, double tax. That's why nobody wants to fuck with y'all. Trust account. Damn, that's morbid. How can you have that ahead of time? I'm not. Oh, maybe I missed it. Understanding that one. Letters. Probate court's an important thing. I think it might be a copy of the trust document. I think probate court's too important for them to. But that. Trust accounts require a copy of the trust document or at least trustees' powers, the beneficiaries, and the restrictions on investments. Okay. Do's and don'ts. Game plan. Makes sense. Certification of trust. That's cool. It sounds legit as fuck. Alright, last one. Oh, we actually went over, but I'm already looking at it. The bond. Hey, we just talked about the bullet earlier. I hope that's the same concept. Involves purchasing bonds that they all mature approximately the same date, and that's pulling. Yeah, that's the money move. Cool. All right. I feel good about that session. What was our? This is always all over the place. One day I'm gonna do a official session in here, and then this percentage will be more accurate. 25. Oh, we got 17 out of 25. We need 70 to pass the 65 exam. It's not a math test. Thank God. Bro, 60 fucking 8%. I would have lost by 2. That's why we study. I would have been heated. I don't know if I would have taken it again. I'm kidding.
Markets,
right,
headlines,
that's why we
and
practice,
breaking news
though. Man,
24 hours a day at
Bloomberg.com,
Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Oh, I did. See, I did make that mistake.
I'm Alexis Christoforous.
Look
Energy
away.
stocks are falling. Airline stocks are rising as oil plunges after President Trump suggested the war with Iran could end within days. Iran's foreign minister denies that the two countries are talking. Brent crude is down nearly $11, now at 101.48 a barrel. WTI crude down nearly $9, now at 89.55 the barrel. As for stocks, a nice rally continuing through the morning. S&P 500 up now 123 points. Dow Jones Industrial Average up about 900 points, and the NASDAQ Composite climbing about 470 points. United Airlines plans to cut additional unprofitable flights over the next 2 quarters as it braces for sustained high jet fuel prices tied to the Iran war. United CEO also says he sees oil above $100 a barrel through next year. And it's not just jet fuel. There's more pain at the pump as gas prices continue to rise. According to AAA, the average for a gallon of regular is now $3.96. That is up nearly $1 a gallon in just the past month. For on-demand news 24 hours hours a day.
find annoying
Subscribe
is
to
we have
Bloomberg News
some.
now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Alexis Christoforous. That's the Bloomberg Business Flash.
They're selling,
and
but
Scarlett.
like, why
Alright,
are
Alexis, thank you
selling?
so much.
Oh,
We
we went
appreciate
high
that.
though.
Scarlett Bloom.
Oh no, we didn't
Paul
go
Sweeney,
high
we're
on
live
this.
here
We went
with
high
you
on
in
the
the
other
Bloomberg
one.
Radio studio, streaming live on YouTube and on Bloomberg.com.
These
So
ones
check
we
us out there.
actually couldn't go higher. There was only one option. It
Alexis
was
was
like
just
$1.
talking about energy and what's happening there with oil and the price of gas.
No,
That's a great segue into our
not worried
next
about that
guest,
one.
Alex
I think
Kyle, senior energy
by the end
economist
of the
at
day
the
or
Conference
tomorrow,
Board.
that's still already
Alex, we've seen big
sound
drops as
interesting.
Alexis was just reporting 9-10% declines in crude today,
far.
given President Trump's
All right, I'm talking
social
too
media
much.
post. Are you surprised that oil didn't spike higher? Some people were
I'm gonna
suggesting,
do a couple
gosh,
extra
if you
checks,
cut
but
off
I'm
the
gonna be
Strait of
quiet,
Hormuz,
finish this
it'd be
J, and then
$150
that'll
or
be the
$200
end
oil.
of the session, I
Are you
believe.
surprised we didn't see that type of action, or haven't seen that type of action yet?
I think, you know, we're a few weeks now into this war, and so I think there's certainly a concern about energy prices. I think overall it shows the importance
Still have the opportunity
of
to hit
fossil
that
fuels
chat
when
and
it
tell me
comes
what
to
you're looking at.
you know, the
I'll look at it
economic
right now.
aspect, the financial aspect, the geopolitical,
But if
even
not,
the psychological
thanks for
aspects.
picking it.
And early on in this conflict, I think, you know, market analysts were expecting higher prices, but I think there's a lot of movement on a day-to-day basis, so we might still see higher prices. We're just settling down based on the most recent news.
All along, people have been saying you look at the forward month contracts, and that's where most of the volatility is taking place. The later month contracts are still pretty much holding steady. I think December is around 70. At what point does that start to change?
Well, I think it's all about expectations. It's all about what market participants expecting prices to be. And, you know, this is also then translating into what this actually means for domestic economies. What does this mean for the U.S. economy? You know, gas prices are sort of the first order of change that will affect consumers. And there we're talking about $300+ million a day in additional expenditures as a result of the higher gas prices. So I think this is finding some, you know, a very immediate way into consumer and business bottom lines.
So we saw gas at the pump over the weekend for a lot of the country, you know, approach $4 a gallon. And that's a point where people are saying, maybe I should rethink some of these alternative energy sources out there with you know, oil at over $100. How is the energy transition going from your perspective?
Well, I think it depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about electricity generation, that's really what's driving some of the decarbonization of the U.S. economy. So solar, wind, solar combined with storage is among the lowest cost energy producers in the country, if not the world. So that's certainly a trend that is going to continue. On the mobility side, after the elimination of the tax credit, you know, in the fourth quarter of 2025, we've seen decline in EV sales, but now the question is to what extent that's going to pick up again. And certainly if you're in that industry and you're thinking about what could be the next stimulative effect for EV purchases, high gas prices, well, that's one factor that I think ultimately consumers are going to take into consideration when they are evaluating the purchase of their next vehicle.
Yeah, I'm curious when it comes to that, is there a benchmark price that really prompts consumers to say, you know what, my next vehicle is going to be a hybrid or an EV, even with the expiration of the tax credit, even with the difficulty perhaps sometimes of making sure you have enough charging stations near where you live? They're willing to overlook that because the gas prices are so prohibitive.
Yeah, I think there are, as you mentioned, there are transaction costs, right? So charging is not available everywhere. Not everybody has a charger at home where they can just refuel their electric vehicle overnight. So psychologically, I think, you know, one used to say that once we're hitting $4 a gallon, that's psychologically the barrier where people will really look for other options. And, you know, that was years ago. I think that may have moderated a little bit. But once we're in the realm of $4 or $5 a gallon, and these prices, they go up quickly and then they come down very, very slowly. So I think this is going to be consumers evaluating on a real-time basis what makes sense to them, and combine that with there are a lot of leases that people have entered into a couple of years ago on electric vehicles. They're going to run out. So the used EV market is thought to be very well supplied going into the summer, into the fall. And a lot of the vehicle manufacturers have added their own financial incentives to vehicle purchase options. So that's going to make EVs also more competitive compared to their internal combustion engine peers.
One of the big
all
energy
this fucking
topics
oil shit going
before
on. Yeah,
Iran,
EVs are the
what
future.
volatility associated
Even
with
though
that.
I know it sounds ridiculous
how the
to
AI industry is going to
be
power
those
itself going forward. These data
people that
centers
follow
apparently
the
need a
common
lot of energy,
misconception
a lot
that
of
oil
electricity.
only affects gas
How do you
prices.
think that's
Like I
going to
know that
play out?
it's
Is there a solution out there
infrastructurally
to
like
meet that demand?
I think,
you know,
if you're just
important
looking
as a
at, where
motherfucker,
we are
but
right now, we're
it's
probably around
still
2
an
3%
energy source,
of
which
total electricity
electricity
demand is due to
fucking
data
is,
centers.
and we
The
can make
forecast is
we
that
can
by
make
the end
that
of the
bitch.
decade, that might go up to 8 9%. We're
When
not
we
anywhere
can't make
close to
finite,
Ireland,
when
where
we
it's
can.
25%, but we're
Not
moving
finite.
up. And I think that there's going to be a lot of, the question
Sorry,
is
the
how much are we
billionaires are gonna have
overbuilding
to
data centers, to what
move their
extent do
money
we
over to
really need all this
electricity.
capacity.
Give them
But
money
even
to
if you
do
leave that aside, I think on the upside, there will be additional efficiency in terms of chips becoming more efficient, data centers processing becoming more efficient. And in addition to that, we have to think about what electricity generation can actually provide 24/7 supplies. And that's not only solar combined with storage, but that's certainly also some of these nuclear deals that you see
we got
across
a
the
lot of
country,
killers
3 Mile
out there
Island and
now.
others. So I think that we need to think a little bit more
hopefully some
creatively
of
when it comes
these-
to how we're
It's not about
providing
premium
supplies
right
to
now.
a
These
pretty
are about,
quickly growing industry.
Yeah, sitting
The
pretty
conventional
early
wisdom
and
right
then
now is
seeing
rising
how
oil
the
prices means
week
faster
affects
inflation,
the
which
price of
means
the
fewer options for the
intrinsic
U.S. economy.
value.
Things will slow down, perhaps maybe
That's where I think they might be
stagflation,
able to
maybe
take advantage
recession.
of these.
What do people misunderstand? What do they get wrong when they
Intrinsic value.
think through sequentially like that?
Not a lot of
Well,
people
I
like
think
to look at that nowadays.
I think
they like to see the cold,
directionally,
hard
what you're finding is with
outside.
higher energy prices, they will find their way into consumer prices ultimately. And it's going to take some time, but for instance, I think one of the biggest
Depends
issues
on
here is
how
diesel
life's
prices.
traded,
You're going
I
to find this in
suppose,
transportation.
a lot of
So
people gotta
for
see
the
it right
large
away. They
mobility companies,
have
they're
a
going to
lot
be
of
faced
faith
with
to be
much
leaping
higher
with.
cost, and that's going to find its way down to consumers. But it's also other products. Pretty much anything we buy is being transported to a certain extent. That
There you go. Well,
extends
that's
to ocean
that.
shipping as well.
I think I
95% of everything
threw out
we're
all the
purchasing
feelers
arrives
that
at
we
the
could
location
for
on a
now.
vessel. And
Trying
so
to
I
take
think there
advantage
are
of the time.
pressures. And combine that with an economy that really hasn't seen much
finish off my
employment growth
coffee and then
since
try to
the
make some
spring
more
of
moves.
2025.
So that's
there are real
finance with
concerns
Reezuhn.
what higher
Look
prices
out, I
in
like to do this in the morning,
combination
obviously,
with
for
lower growth
obvious
actually going to
reasons.
mean going forward.
And
From
then,
even from a
I like to
policy
move with
perspective on how to
Reezuhn
address
midday.
that.
That's our chess
Alex, thank you
runs.
so much. Really appreciate it.
So,
Alex
look
Heim,
out for
he's a
that if
senior
you're interested
energy
in chess, and
economist
then come
at the
back later
conference
for a
board,
debate with
joining us
Reezuhn
here
and
in
open
studio.
mic
We
nights.
appreciate that. I just want to get back
Peace.
to these markets.